Oh, ladies and gentlemen, it's a good time to be a Valorant fan. We can take a breath here after seeing all of our playoffs finalized and sending out, well, at least seeing what teams are going to be sending off to regional competition, motherfuckers. That's right. We're on the other side of VCT. Man, feels good. I'm here with Vansilli, and I got word from upstairs that we were vastly overrepresented in those with follicular activity. So we've remedied that. Tom Biz, Mitch Man's better half. Welcome back on the show, man.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to giving maybe a slightly more tempered opinion on things. I know there's some stuff about Fnatic coming later on, and we might be able to talk about someone other than Enzo, so that'll be fun.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, we definitely. I mean, we've maliciously leveraged Mitch's and Enzo's little bromance to sort of drag him onto the show multiple times. But yeah, we'll have a chance to grill him and Jake later on. Tons of great stuff in the show today. We won't spoil too much of it. But we'll get cracking here because we have a little rapid fire segment at the start of the show because there's a ton of little disparate topics that I kind of want to reach out and grab. And the first one, like I looked at the calendar and I realized it's been at least 3 months since we brought Seth on the show to shill for DRX. So it's time for our biannual DRX are gonna win Masters segment. Seth, welcome back to the show, bro. I hear you're nursing a mild injury at the moment, mate.
Just an old video.
Little bit. It's a rough time for a lot of games to be coming out. Overwatch 2 beta's re-releasing because I did have a little bit of a minor boo-boo last night. So I've got a cracked knuckle. So got to get that taken care of. So in about 7 hours, I'm going to the doctor and potentially undergoing surgery. But I have to do my part. I have to come back on the show. It's always a pleasure to be invited. And of course, I'm going to be talking up the RX because once more, they are the representative from Korea. They are going to be the players that go over there, represent the region, and hopefully this time come back with a trophy.
Right. So obviously, yeah, DRX are representing South Korea again. The game's changed. The scene in South Korea has also changed a lot here, but this team has still been able to weather the storm. I think that really speaks highly of them here. But can we dive a little bit deeper and talk about this roster set and what it is about DRX that's allowed them to once again conquer their home region?
I think they just really fleshed out the roles. Now we've been seeing a lot more of the triple initiator that they're running where they don't have a duelist and they just have RB playing on something like a KO and everybody just plays off of each other's information rather than needing to have a duelist that, is kind of hard carrying or is falling behind, something that RB suffered from over at Masters. He was not putting up solid performances. This time, though, this stage, he's looked absolutely impeccable on pretty much every role that he's done, whether it's the triple initiator, whether he's playing the Jet or the Rays. The guy's been putting up solid figures, but I also like that we kind of just have locked Buzz into chamber only for the most part. Like he does flip over a little bit to like we saw Killjoy in the grand finals and whatnot versus
Exactly.
Maru. So he has been still expanding it a little bit. He's not quite one tricking, but one of the things that he had said at Masters was you need a chamber. He's just so strong. But then they proceeded to not really run him at Masters, and then they ended up losing the games. So I like that we are seeing him trend more into chamber. The switch up in this series, I found to be a bit surprising, just because he has been playing it. It's obviously incredibly good when you're playing on maps like Ascent and whatnot. But I think that they just felt comfortable enough playing against Maru, and they wanted to have the Killjoy there to kind of like counter strat them, use the the lockdowns and whatnot to kind of really just flush Maru into certain positions, because I think they had a really good idea of how Maru likes to play the game. I'm not going to be shocked at all, though, going into Copenhagen if you just see Buzz right back onto the chamber.
Okay. I mean, the run here for DRX was pretty flawless though, right? Like not dropping a map in their way through the playoffs here in VCT also is a pretty big statement, especially when other regions definitely locked up pretty tightly here. I kind of want to know from you, Seth, where DRX sort of stand in the meta and what do you feel like compositions are really their or maps rather are really their strengths? Because I think a lot of pundits looking out for DRX want to know how they should expect like a map veto to play out and where DRX are going to look to try and put out their I guess their best sort of permutation of this roster and composition.
So the thing is, like this stage, they basically showed an immense amount of comfort on basically every single map. Maps that they formerly weren't really that willing to go to or kind of wanted to avoid, they've been picking them up. There's been a hell of a lot of Breeze, Ascent, even Bind, which is not a map that they historically, like going back into last year, not a map where they would really like to play. But it seems like they've really fleshed out their compositions and their play styles on it almost every single map. The only one that we don't really have any information on is Icebox, because that's been just widely banned, if not by DRX themselves, then by teams that are going up against them. So I'm guessing given their former proficiency for that map before it did undergo the minor changes, I'm expecting that they're still probably incredibly competent on that map. So I think that going into a map veto versus DRX, if you're an international team, going to Copenhagen to try to play against them, it might be best to just go for whatever you think you're strongest on, just because like DRX does not really have any bad maps.
Yeah.
So trying to tackle them and fight them in that regard is not really going to work out for you. Yeah, and like Fracture,
wow.
They've looked excellent on that. They finally picked it for the very first time because it's only ever been picked against them or left up. And then they finally selected it themselves, and they looked impeccable on it. So I think this is an even scarier. And I know that people are gonna be, "Oh, this is a copium." This is an even scarier DRX than we've ever seen before. Like
I was gonna say, like
RB is actually
the
just
Copian actually died down a little bit here, Seth, from like the first time we got you on the show, talking about like Newturn, for example, then to Vision Strikers, then to DRX.
It's been very reasonable today.
He's been very, very tame. I don't know if it's because his wrist is hurting.
I think he was
so
burnt
badly.
from last time.
Exactly. But I mean, I get it. For me, it still feels like Korea doesn't have that too much of competition yet. So it's still like a big question mark as to what's that's going to look like at the international stage. But as you just saw the stats they have from map to map, if you're looking at a 7 map rotation where, you're going to be good on at least 4 out of the 7 because your best one's going to get banned and then you're still okay on your worst one.
You can't ban them out.
You're still okay, exactly.
Yeah.
So we'll see. Well, we'll try to see if we can huff it up.
What's your expectations then, Seth? Obviously from your position, seeing them compete so dominantly sort of domestically, and also knowing that in the past they've had some really big runs. Like, where do you see this team going?
Getting out of groups, period.
I mean, getting out of groups, I think it's guaranteed. Don't worry, they're gonna be able to get out of groups. They'll probably still get shafted. They'll probably end up in some group with fucking like Optic and Fnatic and some other teams and whatnot. And everyone's gonna be like, oh my god, are they gonna be able to escape? And they'll make it happen. They'll get out of their group. I mean,
Fnatic aren't even in groups, so that would be they'd really get shafted if that happened.
Okay, whatever. Anyway. You know what I mean, but I think that they should be able to make a deep run. I think that a semifinal appearance is definitely not out of the question whatsoever, if not a grand finals and a victory. Like these players are of that caliber. They can play to that level. They can best everybody else in the world on the right day. It's just a matter of, do we see this inconsistency in some of the players, namely RB, if he's primarily going to be playing, duelists and they're not going for triple initiator setups. If we see that inconsistency kind of creep back into his performance and he can't find his shots, that's where I'm going to start panicking a little bit for them. But I think that given what they showed, what they did during the stage, going 21-0 in their maps, not dropping any at all, being pushed to overtime a few times, but for the most part, incredibly clean run. I think that if they can bring that level of play to the international stage, they absolutely can take it all.
Oh, I'm hyped. I can't wait to move to predictions, and I think I've kind of I still undersell DRX every time. I think I'm done doing that. I'm a pretty strong one last time.
Join me.
All right, Seth, man, thanks for joining us, and good luck with what may be a bit of surgery for you tomorrow, man.
Yeah,
hopefully
don't shake those wrists too much.
Hopefully that fragging hand is back in form real soon.
I've been through worse. I've managed to cast, 12 hours after getting an appendix removed, so I think I'll be okay with my hands.
I'm telling you, like if Talent Takedown comes around, we need you in form, mate. You know what I'm saying?
Don't worry, I'll be well practiced by then.
Hell yeah!
All right, mate. Take care. Thanks for joining us, and all the best.
Thanks, Zach.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, all right. Look, credit to the guy. I think Seth was really measured this time around. To be fair, I mean, still seeing him with a bottle of soju in his hand, but I appreciate
should take the Korean league and just make it like the sort of Pokemon league where every other team sort of has to like go through and then just at the end you get like the final badge from just fighting DRX, because I feel like genuinely every time we talk about them because they go flawless and then they get to the international and they're still good, but it's just like I would love for them, I know they can't do this, but I'd love for them to play in Europe for like a few months and see how good they became, because I feel like that happens every time. We hear that they get into the scrims, they get kind of ruffled up a bit, and then they start showing what they've really got.
Yeah,
they always had slower starts.
Speaking of obviously sort of getting out to those live events and sort of performing internationally, we've actually had some we've had some insane LAN events recently, right? It was like nothing, of course, with COVID, and we know that like VCT's been pretty careful about their live events. We're sort of building that up. This is the Carmine Corp event. What even is this?
Look at all those Plat Chat fans with the green squares.
Yeah, okay. Can you explain? Can someone explain this to me? As someone who's been busy cleaning his house last week,
Mhm.
this is obviously Come On Corp is like what, a regional team?
Yeah, it's a
Are
League of
they in the
Legends team.
LEC?
Yeah. So like they have a super huge fan base.
What's the color? What's
Oh my God.
the color? I said, what's the color? Let's go.
So yeah,
Right.
as you can tell, they have a very sick fan base for KC. And the thing is like what's cool about it is they have a really big name in League of Legends, but overall the crowd will show up just to support the Oregon itself. So they have like this cool event here where Vitality plays as well for League of Legends. For Valorant. So they had like just a huge fan base of just KC in France, and then boom, they fill up a whole arena, and it's fucking loud. And they rally behind the cries as if they're watching European football, which is super awesome to see. But then on the other end, like I think for a lot of people, when I was following the Reddits and everything too, they were talking about, oh well, it's just because it's KC, they'll just support any type of esports, whatever. But then look at the difference here. This is
Valorant event.
literally just for Valorant, right? So this is, and this is a styrofoam cup trophy. I don't fucking know. It seems light as fuck, but
It is definitely light. Yeah. It's fine though. You see what happens when the trophies are too fucking heavy?
true.
These guys are
It
gamers,
breaks.
mate. What you want?
But okay, but you look at it, right? Now this is just Valorant, and it's still filled up an arena of 14,000 people. So I think now, if you're thinking about a fan base of people getting behind orgs just for the esport of Valorant, I think it's gonna get fucking huge. I can't fucking wait for it. I know that Copenhagen has a crowd, but I don't think it's gonna be as big. But I'm still happy
we're
we're
talking
gonna
about
get
that,
something.
right?
Yeah.
It's like 1 to 2K tickets being sold for Copenhagen. So it's like it's a limited crowd, which we knew.
Yeah.
This expectation was sort of set by Riot. But let me share something with you. I was just in Texas, yeah. We had if we had 2,000 people in that arena at any one time, I'd be surprised. We had less than that.
Yeah.
I still caught fucking COVID
Yeah.
in Texas.
Yeah.
And then I got home, quarantined for 5 days, and found out my family had caught it from me via the AC. So like, just to set the expectation, a smaller crowd doesn't mean that anyone is going to be sort of immune from that. So please exercise caution if you do go out there.
Mm.
The COVID has really caused me some personal issues over the last 3 weeks at home. So be careful. But obviously, Mitch, great to know there will be a crowd, right? Still something to work with. Still a first, I feel like, for this level of competition. So it must be nice also to sort of take that and ramp into Istanbul.
Yeah, no, I think especially when you have like I imagine it's going to be scaled up as well, because I think also just restrictions in places like Turkey are going to be quite a bit less. But I think that it's a fantastic start. And to be honest, from a commentary point of view, you're almost just sitting there going, I'm just happy we have a crowd. Like, I don't need 14,000 straight off the bat. I'll take 2,000. To be honest, it's better than nothing.
Even outside of talent, just from a pro player's perspective, I think they're all going to be pretty happy about it too, right? Because they were also mentioning like, yeah, it's nice to be on land, to be playing at these Masters event, but it's not the same thing as having a crowd cheering for you. So I think that's going to add a huge aspect into how much hype we're going to get in like star clutches that we're going to see from these players coming to Masters 2.
Let's revisit this topic. We kind of touched on it last week, and I think the conversation is still developing around Split being removed from the map pool, right?
It's the best.
A lot of people are sort of saying that, like,
love it.
why the fuck is Icebox not sort of happening here? So 5.0 was where Pearl gets brought in, and Split won't be playable. Obviously, like Nismo here, sort of saying like, I think Split is actually a really good map, and I think we've sort of seen that at the pro level, right?
Yes.
It's kind of where we first started to see Omen make his sort of resurgence. But you know, a lot of pros are sort of saying Bind is killing it. Like it's not it. Like, what do you guys think about that? Like, how do we distill the current discourse from pro players about this choice? Because I'm sure casuals are fucking glad it's not there, because it's a bit.
I think
I suppose it's a bit hard. I played.
it's just
it
the
fucking
attacks.
gold.
It's if you start attack side, you kind of cry a little bit because it can be quite difficult to get things done. But I think within a pro player, and even just from a viewer standpoint, it's one of the maps that has the most variation. I think
That's the thing.
when we talk about our hatred of Icebox, it's because I think in EMEA this season we had 20 maps of Icebox. And the variation will have been like, oh, maybe we'll try Fade instead of Sova, just because Sova's not that good. It's not actually anything to do with like teams being really innovative. Like some teams are definitely doing it better, but it's really difficult to see anything new. I think it's like when we saw like a Viper's Pit go through Kitchen once, everybody lost their fucking minds.
That's it.
Oh my god, a Viper's Pit in Kitchen!
Nats is lurking mid. Nats is lurking mid.
Oh my
Cool.
god!
And everything's changed so far, man. Everything's changed so much on Icebox that Nats is lurking mid. This is gonna be amazing. And then you get like these new Icebox changes where the boxes are like on yellow on B side is a little bit like horizontal now.
Yeah, like it's rotated.
Yeah, rotated on vertical, right? So let's actually have an example in 2022 of how you execute into B site on Icebox. And if you actually have a look at it, it's pretty much the same fucking thing. You just put a fucking Viper wall up, and then there you go. Look at this. The same wall comes up, the same Viper wall comes up, and then what do? Oh, you're gonna have to play a pulse plant back towards green, back towards yellow. But actually, joke's on you. If you're actually looking at the clip, it's the same clip as 2021, so it's the same fucking strat. So even if it's like, oh, we're gonna try to fade in here or whatnot,
What's the counter ice wall? I need the
exactly
counter ice wall.
Exactly.
That's
so
the
what
play.
ancient do you still have in there? You still have a Viper.
hearing this.
You still have a fucking Sage. And let's have a look at actually something else. We'll look at the heat maps. Show me the fucking heat maps, actually, Daniel and Ian. So in 2021, when you actually have like the brand new Icebox that came out in 2020 and then 2021 comes out, this is where you're planning on the B side. Okay, cool. That means that you have a Sage wall coming up and everybody's planning along the wall. If you're planning a little bit more on the left of where the red circle is, that's because your wall got broken on the right side and you got to plant behind a wall somewhere else. Now let's look at where we're actually planning in 2022. And this is Masters 1 in Iceland when you're looking at the heat map, and it's the same fucking place. Yes, a little bit of variation if you're going to... Why? Because the Viper wall is actually a little bit deeper towards Snowman now, where sometimes some teams are actually planning at a safer spot.
Spawn,
yeah,
like,
but where are you still planning for? If it's not for a B side lineup on the right side of the B side, you're still planning for a long green. So you're still going to have to put a Viper wall up. You're still going to have to fall back towards green. And then you're still gonna have to play towards yellow and jiggle peek to try to fucking stop the defuse.
Sure.
It's fucking boring.
I'm hearing you. I'm hearing you. But also, you guys haven't had to play Temple of Anubis for 6 years. So ratio plus L plus didn't ask plus you fell off. Could be a lot worse, but yeah.
Could be.
To see.
We just get Dust 2 in,
like...
you know, like pick mid. I love that map. It's great.
The thing is, and like I said, I feel it's also because there's some sort of like, it's a little bit stale when you always need to have a Viper to split the map, which is why I was like still hesitating between Icebox and Breeze, because Breeze is another one where, oh, you need a Viper, you need to split the A site, you need to split the B site, you get a plant, and then you play.
My brother in
spot,
Christ,
you know, so.
that fucking map just came out. It just came out.
And it needs some changes.
Damn. All right, you fucking Val guys are crazy. You really are. You really are all Zoomers. It's fucking wild. Anyway, look, I think this feeds in part of the discussion about like what the metagame is right now, especially in Europe. And I think this sort of clip from Boaster talking about FPX and sort of them trying to get very cute and really try to innovate here was pretty poignant and feeds into this discussion a lot, I think. So let's take this first, and we'll see where we go from there.
So I mean, I'm not sure where the game's going to go. Minnie and I have discussed about like, should we do the FPX style where they kind of like swap their comps around?
Every time.
As long as the roles stay the same, is what we believe. Like, we can have people on the roles that they do. So I'll be like the Omen, the Astra, the thingy, and you don't want to dilute it, complicate it too much. Like, for instance, you don't want Zipan on Sova on Icebox because he misses shot darts on the pipes, and that's because he doesn't play the agent enough, and it's not natural enough for him, you know, like those sort of things. And you see them like missing crucial utility that if like they were a Raze main, or if they were a Sova main, a Fade main, you know, all these sort of certain mains, they'd actually be more comfortable in their boots. Because I won't lie, like I played the Initiator, as you know, and I had the worst time of my life. So I think you should be comfortable, and that's what we're kind of doing. Like, we just play our comps, we practice every scenario, we talk about every scenario, like we have the protocols. So now it's just about kind of like sometimes some of the rounds get a bit lost and confused, but you know, we just have the firepower as well, and that's also what you need.
Can someone fucking tell me first why Lothar is holding a cudgel?
I have no idea. I know I was bringing it up on the show, but I don't know who was holding it. He was doing it during a teleprompter segment, but I don't know why he was doing it.
Maybe he was trying to indicate something on a screen. Either way, Okay, so the discussion is obviously like, some of these teams, you're talking about FPX, they mix it up so much that like sometimes the execution lacks, right? The composition, the idea is good,
Yeah.
but the follow-up isn't there because these players, even as good as they are, haven't had quite enough time to sort of really master those particular picks. You're really putting a lot on your plate.
Yep.
NRG are a team I think we have an example of sort of showing us this sort of the Yoru and this sort of fade gameplay, Vans.
And that's why I think Energy was in like a similar boat where in a past interview with Chet and even FNS, they say you always have to be like ahead of the meta. You almost have to create the meta yourself, right? And I think this was a interview that Pujan FNS had with Esports Doug. And,
first name basis, okay.
Right? Yeah, we're tied like that. Fucking tied like that. I've been casting FNS forever. Anyways, yeah, so they're trying these things. They're trying to innovate a bit. Like, for example, this Euro on Haven, where unfortunately Som didn't get the best value out of that just because the roles that he's usually used to is like a jet and a raise, where one is a satchel charge, one is a dash. You could still see the direction that you're heading into. But now when you're actually going into like a teleportation with Yoru, if you're not using your kit correctly, you're TPing into the site, you don't really know where you're going to come out and against who you're going to come out against. And then that kind of like throws a wrench into your plans. And they've tried that with Neon on Bind, going like a DRX style, but it's not easy to like plug and play and try to execute that in the same style that DRX does it. So I think they've realized that trying to be too ahead of the meta is not their style. And just as Boaster says, it comes back to what you need to play to be comfortable. They went back into their comfort picks into the lower bracket run, and they almost made it into the top 3. So that's
I love
good.
it.
Yeah.
Daniel's feeling saucy, just highlighting that -11 now.
The thing I'd like to add as well, though, is something that, because I spoke to Doom Bros about this, because I was like, you look back at some of the old games they played, there was like their split, no duelist comp shit that was weird, and they were playing it versus Forza, who they were just better than. In pretty much every single way, they were just better than, but they tried to run weird shit, and it backfired on them. And I even said to him, I was like, do you reckon you just win that game if you just stick Shao on Jet and he just runs at them? And he goes, yeah, we probably would have done, but we almost want to be this creative team so that we can switch things up on the fly. The only worry I've had is, I think Angel said in one of the interviews, was that some of the comps they run, they test in 2 scrims. And that's it. That's enough.
Yeah.
That's enough for them to feel comfortable with it. And I'm like, 2 scrims versus some teams, fine. 2 scrims versus Fnatic or an Optic, you're not. It's not going to work. It's not going to run as smoothly.
It's like they're trying to run so many different comps on different maps that like they don't have enough time to get an adequate level of testing before they try and run those, and they kind of trust themselves.
Yoru Icebox.
But you make a great point, Tom, and like they only try it on a couple scrims. I mean, here's an example of what Boast was talking about. It wasn't just shitting on Zipan. It's a good example of Zipan not quite hitting the mark here, so to speak. We can show you exactly what Boast is referring to here.
A lot of strain on this man's shoulders. Now, they have dealt with a lurk. Boast has been found, and this hasn't really disrupted much. They know what's up. Now, that is an issue. Can they take this away? 1, 2.
The second one missed.
Didn't get it. Did not get it. Now, Artis is stand and deliver time and just gets Ferrari peaked by Alpha here.
There it is. I mean, that's 2 shock darts, obviously, onto the lockdown. It does happen. I mean,
It's just a kid.
but
Give him a break.
just a kid. Oh God, imagine that. So I mean, on that note, we did actually, there's another side to this story, and we heard a little bit from Angel. Kind of talking about what FPX's approach is. I think, Tom, as you kind of alluded to that, because we want to kind of know, you see Yoru at Masters. Let's see what Angel had to say about this.
It's like after the Jet nerf, the situation is like Chamber is very good at defensive side, Jet is very good on attacking side, and both of the agents like not that good on opposite. We were looking for like an options for some agents who is being able to like create some space. Yoru potential is one of these agents. Obviously, he's not in the best, not in the meta right now. Yeah, I would do some fixes for him. I would do like switch faster after like he's tipping or from multi. But in general, it's a good option to have. The problem is no one playing it. So it's hard to tell. Like you need to try, you need to practice it, you need to play it official matches with it. Yeah, you need to understand how enemy who expects Yoru will counter it. So basically, it's just an option for us, like to have as a surprise pick, I would say.
Do you feel like that?
Okay, so surprise pick, and I think Angel makes a great point about playing Yoru against someone who doesn't know how to counter it and someone who does. it's a whole different story because you need to understand like what you're implying to your opponents with your use of utility, right?
Yeah.
The impact of Yoru is all about what kind of impression you actually give your opponents and if you're able to fool them. So Vance, is there any sort of map, you know, if we go to Masters, is there any sort of map where you feel like Yoru is going to be a viable option, it's going to make sense, or are we still a little bit too early for him to, you know, be that impact? Because Angel mentioned about the gun up time. There's a few examples of him like TPing and then just not having time to get his gun up, like the Icebox A attack clip against Fnatic, for example.
Yeah, Icebox maybe is not the best example, but I feel that when I was watching him play on Breeze, it actually looked pretty good when Angel used a Yoru there. And he brings a great point where it's not necessarily just about Yoru trying to create space, but how you're actually trying to group everybody together to create that space. So I have two examples right here on Breeze, one against Ascend, and I think the other one's against Mick. But we'll look at the first one right now, where you see the setup where usually on the attack, we're taking this mid control from Angel on mid. So he's usually putting a TP right over here, and then he flashes over and TPs out. So he takes control of the elbow so that players are falling back from tunnel and tunneling into the B site. What means that you'll have less numbers on rotate, on a longer rotate to get back into the A site. So the example that we have right now is them getting to ready to execute into this A site. So let me zoom in right now to show you the setup. So Angel actually currently has his... actually, let me go into the VOD review first so you can actually see how Angel is prepping things up. He goes into the Dimensional Drift, and he's going to be the one that's going to execute into the site. But pay attention to every other piece of utility that's going to help FPX to get into the A site. First off, focus on where we have Sugetsu playing the Viper inside halls because they're waiting for... Everything is about timing with this playing with this Yoru. So now that you have Angel getting into the site, he's got a Dimensional Drift. What he does right now is throw a decoy on top of that. So this decoy, what it does is that the decoy is going to start walking towards this area, and you have two other players following behind it. CNED's going to have to be forced to break it, thinking that it's going to be just a hit because the Dimensional Drift is not heading in this direction. So he's actually heading in this direction right here. They're going to think that their Yoru is the actual Angel. So as he actually breaks this this Yoru, he's going to be forced to be flashed away, which then gives the opportunity for the door to get open and for Sugetsu to actually get the kill onto CNED. How this opens up the site now is that you have a KO knife into the site, you have Prowlers that are going to be able to come out to clear out towards the spawn, you have more utility that's going to clear towards yellow, and also flashes from... Angel to take control of right side pyramid and potentially even get into this area if they needed to into yellow to support. Now they get a perfect plant and they played a pulse plant over here. I think that was really cool as an example as how you want to try to break into a site with utility. Another one is a variation of how to get into the A site, which I'm going to get to right now. It's the Nurge and Love It variation, I think, #1. So let me just open that up right now. And this one over here is exactly this one here. So pay attention to how they actually execute into the site. First off, Sugetsu. He actually has a first lineup from this corner over here, which lands a poison orb on the top of the bridge. What that does is that it doesn't allow any defenders to see players pushing into the site, which is why they don't really need this Viper wall to split the site into A. They're just going to try to condition this mid, which later on gets used, for example, in the Ascent game when they actually went for that mid split. So the second lineup is that he's throwing it from here, and he's getting ready to throw a snake bite into this area as well. So how does that all coincide with the rest of the utility? You already have this Yoru going with a decoy into the A site. That's actually going to just try to get a flash into this KO defo that shoots it and is forced to fall back. This then allows, after the Owl Drone, to throw another flash and a TP from Angel right into the back site, which gets two player blinded, puts a knife into this area at yellow. You have the snake bite onto the ground. The poison orb comes up at the same time too. So they're just overwhelming every single defender into mech. Like, look how much ground control they have into the site. They have 0 map control into this site right now, trying to fight back. So technically, you're able to get a 5-player post plant setup for FPX. The only thing is that unfortunately they lose this round because look at where look at where Shao is moving into the site to go for a plant. He's out in the open when he's going towards a rail instead of going deeper in the area where he might have a headshot angle on the people looking at mid. right? So the wall doesn't come up. He gets picked
Was he
off.
vulnerable to double doors here?
He's vulnerable to double doors because the wall didn't come up, right? Because when you put the wall up and also the poison orb, then your fuel goes down a lot faster.
Didn't
So
they
that-
also play like on top of the wall, or like it was like a boosted up angle, right? So that
Yeah.
they could see over quite a bit of the stuff that would normally be in the way. So
Exactly,
it's not so much
exactly.
Xiao's fault. Like it wasn't
No,
like him
no.
just not expecting the door. It was that they played
It's
a weird angle.
And it's a timing
Right.
on the toxic screen dropping down as well,
Yeah.
which then with him dying, everybody had to collapse back into the
It's
site to try to
like,
pick up spike
after
and
the
plant
Jet
instead of
nerf.
play post plant. So that was
The
it.
situation is like
So that was pretty
Chamber is
cool.
very
That's,
good.
that's
at
how I think this would be really nice to have. Yeah, I was trying to talk over all of that, but really nice to have Angel to play
He's
on
back.
On Breeze.
I think, yeah, interesting to see how Angel sort of tries to pave the way for each of those TPs in by flashing himself.
Yeah.
I think if he finds that first pick there on a player who's like flashed and trying to run away, maybe that goes a little bit
He did that
differently
multiple
there. But
times. That's the thing. I think in terms of the ideas, it's brilliant. Like, especially on Breeze, a lot of open space. I think the setups are really cool. And a lot of the time with conditioning, you can have some actually really awesome plays by just fake TPing and stuff as well. The problem is, it's not just down to you as the Yoru. Like, you have to have all these other different pieces, and if one goes wrong, you're just left in the site on your own, not hoping no one kills you. So
it's so elaborate.
it's all about structure, and that's why I think FPX pull it off sometimes. And then you look at their Icebox; he was once trying to TP at the spawn and kill someone, Hunter's Fury, and you're like, okay, that was just such a big risk.
The more elements you sort of have to a play like that, the more vulnerabilities it has. But I think this
Yes.
ties into your Angel saying you're always great at creating space. He did it twice, 2 TPs forward before flashing, right?
Yeah.
Forcing people out of the site and setting up that post plant. So
He did it every round.
yeah,
Like, every round on A or B, it was the same thing.
so it's it's almost there, right? It's in the post plant scenario where they need to sort of that structure needs to be maintained.
Yeah.
Thought it was
It's
really
also a bit
interesting,
shit at defense as well. Like that's
Yeah,
the main
sure.
problem. In attacking side, like setups, it's really cool. But if you then switch over to the defensive half, I think once he managed to TP behind some people, you're like, oh, that was pretty cool. And then for the rest of the half, it's like rotations, and that's about it.
Yeah. Okay, let's move on. Let's talk about a really impactful player out of the North American VCT here. Obviously, XZ booked their tickets to Masters in finally. I think such a huge milestone
go
for
Great
this team.
Britain.
But, yeah, yeah, exactly. Vans, though, you've highlighted a player you feel like has had a huge impact, but it's not
Is it
always
Def?
been obvious.
Usually Def is one, but there is another player that you don't
Oh.
talk about too much because usually Def, he doesn't frag as much. He has his moments, but he's a great IGL, of course. But I think the person I want to focus on this time is going to have to be BCJ. Because you could always rely on Cryocells, you could always rely on Zekin, and everybody's talking about this duo that's going to be able to carry the
Crycells was
team.
plus 40 for the series, to be fair. That's
Exactly,
kinda fucked
exactly.
up.
And he also had like 101 kills against FaZe. Yeah, in total, it was pretty fucking insane. And even Zekin had a pop-off moment in the grand finals against Optic. But BCJ himself is just a pure hype man for this team that showed that he was the type of player that just wanted it so much. And I feel that type of energy just oozed into the room with the rest of his players where they just fucking ran it through and were able to have a great comeback against even Optic on a map like Ascent, where BCJ himself has had like the best results actually for the team. Funny enough, as we're criticizing Zipan playing a Sova on Icebox, this is a map that you actually have Zekin playing Sova on Ascent, and then you have BCJ playing Omen, and he is popping off at Omen overall in this map. Like, he had so many multi-kills, so many good clutches, playing with a lot of confidence, holding the A site like gods between him and Def, as you just mentioned here, Tom, another great player for the team. So I think their defender half would just show that how good it was and how useful he was actually and impactful to the team. Overall, if you're looking at BCJ in the series against FaZe, he had 10 first blood, and I think 4 of them were on the Ascent map. And every time BCJ actually had first blood, it converted into a win. So 100% of the times
Whole
that he
series,
got first
right?
blood, exactly.
That's insane.
100% of the times that he got first blood, it converted into a win. So you need that type of momentum from a guy that's able to not only multi-frag, clutch first blood, and also be the hype man. The way that he's just screaming out to his team, like between rounds, and you saw the clips during the VCTs, he was good to go, man. It's really nice to see how this team now has a little bit more depth to just that Cryocells and Zekin storyline, with the support crew, the support cast, is also able to frag out as well. XZs continue to get better and better every time, where, yes, I kind of slept on them last week when I didn't predict them to win, but I feel that I needed to be one of those people just so that they continue to have that drive to prove
Of
people like me
course.
wrong.
Of course.
Yeah.
The Optic
Okay,
story,
right.
right? Isn't that the whole story of Optic?
Exactly.
Is no one
Exactly.
believes they'll ever win anything other than 99% of people.
And that's the
I
thing.
mean, yeah, you could.
Sorry, I was gonna say Optic never wins in North America, but we're winning international stage now. So
Only in Iceland, and
Yep.
only wins in Iceland. That's
we'll
the rule.
see. We'll see.
That's
what
right.
Masters
Yeah,
do.
we need to see if they can actually convert out of just that one locality.
Yeah.
So let's see what Copenhagen has in store. Here's another news story coming out of NA. Obviously, like as we head close to a franchise season, we see teams make a lot of moves, right?
Mhm.
I think it's really interesting how like Riot have this sort of criteria for franchising that's pretty merit based. You know what I mean? Like it's definitely something, but it also is the kind of thing that I think provokes teams to consider deepening their investments in this space.
Mhm.
Shopify, one such team, I think, who have just signed the Luminosity roster,
Mhm.
who obviously have an LCQ spot, which is, I mean, LCQ and NA is going to be kind of insane. But
yeah.
obviously, previously, Shopify Rebellion were a Game Changers roster. Now they're expanding, grabbing Luminosity. So there's some spend here for sure. What do you make of this? This definitely feels like a play for franchising, but with so few slots available,
Yeah.
there has to be a degree of certainty from Shopify about this investment.
That's what I was
Otherwise,
thinking.
it's
Do they know
speculative, isn't it?
something? Do
Yeah.
they like? Because I feel like if you're gonna if you need to have a team, maybe you sign like someone who isn't like as successful, I guess I would say, as the guys on Luminosity, because they do well enough that it's probably not going to be a cheap move. But
Mhm.
yeah, for them to come in like basically picking one of the better teams already, obviously within that LCQ spot, I don't know. Maybe they've had a whisper in their ear that if they do, they'll get offered something.
I wonder.
Maybe Riot are like, well, hey, listen, if you've made a significant investment in the Game Changers ecosystem, that's quite a leg up for you. You know
That's
what I
the
mean?
thing. Hopefully that's going to be the case.
TSM molding.
But see that's the thing. I think Scoots, Sir Scoots Scott mentioned it before in a tweet. It's like it's almost clear, almost maybe in the bag that maybe 90% of the teams are already picked for the franchise of 2023, right? And if that's the case, and there's only 9 teams available or 10 teams available for the Americas, then that's like a 10% even lower.
Well, then
with the
you've
amount of
gotta
teams that are
have,
available
like,
left for that one
loud-
spot. Yeah, exactly.
Probably gotta have crew based on just success.
Exactly.
So like it's already getting lower, and then what are they only gonna give one spot to each, or do they then give 2, and then you're really getting down to like what 6?
Yeah.
Then it starts getting a little bit silly.
We'll still see if they want to build that out a little bit more.
NIP
because
in Brazil, you know, that's not a bad org.
the thing is like the 10 slots is what's still assumed, right?
Right, we don't know that for sure. That's
yeah,
the funny
it
part,
could
and that drives
grow,
so much
but-
of the discussion around.
We
this
love
topic, yeah.
speculation.
If anything,
Oh,
it
I
gives a
know.
branding for Shopify for LCQ, and then if LG has a great run during LCQ, and then they actually qualify for champions, then man, that's great for the brand, at least for Shopify in the short term. If you want to look at like the short term
That was an
marketing run.
expensive announcement video for a short term.
I was gonna say,
Oh,
well,
yeah.
I mean, it's
They better
still,
at least have had the fucking dinner. You know what I mean?
One, it's still
they better have fed
Shopify.
those boys.
One, it's still Shopify, and 2, yeah, that looks like it's like Harbor 60 in Toronto or something like that. Because
But
I
they
think
could have
Shopify
just
stays
like
up there.
paid a few $100s to someone to edit like a frag movie and then go, look, we signed the team. Peace
Tom, you
out.
got to know that when it's actually when it's not an esports org that has marketing's budget, then they
Man,
can
I'm
actually
good with
afford to
it. I
spend on
don't
that,
need
right?
some fucking like London grime rap music in the background for a bunch of fucking white guys crossing their arms over and over again.
Hey, you
End me
leave
with that.
London grime out of
Mate,
this.
I fucking love that shit. All right, big Dizzy Rascal fan. Big up the boy. Not about it. I just we've seen it far too much. I'll take that music into the gym any day of the week, but that's about it. Okay, well, good luck to Shopify because God knows how many hoops are there to be jumped through here. It must be nice to be in Riot's position. And be like, yes, what will you show me? How will you demonstrate your usefulness to me here? All right. Let's do one more topic before we go to a break and we get our sort of main interview in. Time to talk about who our dark horses are for Masters, right? If you're Vincent N in the chat, you think that Optic are dog shit and haven't won anything, you know, which is fine. Look, sometimes termites crawl into people's ears and start, you know, eating away. That's fine. I'd like to know what your thoughts are. Obviously, the 12 teams, I'll run them through real quickly for you guys by obviously reading them off the screen, not off the top of my head. Guild, Fnatic, Fun Plus Phoenix, Loud, Optic, Xset, PaperX, Xerxia, DRX, Leviathan, Northeption, and the LCQ from LATAM/BR, which is what NIP and I don't know. Or
Crew.
Crew, yeah. So, Vans,
Yep.
can we sell you on some Crew Hopium?
Croupium.
No.
Can I? Croupium. That sounds like disease that fatal to children. To be honest with you. What about? Can I sell you on a little bit of Paper Rex action? What about that?
I don't even
cheap right now.
I don't consider
Because
paper
has
Rex-
wares,
You-
motherfucker.
Yeah, but
Don't go too far because that might be where I'm.
Okay.
The
on
thing
my
is, it's
mind,
like,
you know?
yes, but also Paper Rex is not a dark horse for me. You know, I
but
think
then-
Fuck off.
no
Okay,
one
none of them
who's
are
good
dark
is a
horses. There were
dark
like 2
horse.
dark horses then here in this list. But okay, let's assume that like, anyone that's not top EMEA, top NA,
yeah,
maybe top APAC are dark horses, right?
yeah.
Just give me
So Xerxia, I have Xerxia actually as my dark horse.
Wait, you didn't say Brazil. Loud are my dark horse, even though they finished second at the last event.
Yeah,
you know,
they're
huge dark horse.
That's defined as a favorite. You fucking idiot.
But he said NA, Asia, and EU. They are Brazil, so get fucked.
That's true. That's
Loud's
true.
a favorite.
Could
Loud's
be-
a favorite.
You can no. I mean, how many
They are
fucking
a
favorites
favorite.
are there?
They are a
Okay,
favorite.
all right then. Fuck you guys. Who are the favorites here? So we can just strike them from the list. Let's get on the same page here.
Optic,
I
Loud,
would say,
Fnatic.
yeah, Fnatic.
Yeah.
Okay. What about what do you guys think about Northeption?
Nope. We'll talk about
No?
it later, and I don't think they're gonna make it.
Okay, all right,
Yeah.
all right. I was
I think
thinking
they
about
could
it.
upset like a team here and there just with how direct a lot of their plays are, but I think they're quite easy to read, and I think they'll struggle versus better teams.
Do you guys think that Guild is a dark horse?
I think that they could do some damage. I'll be surprised if they win, but I have a lot of faith in Coldamenta. I think the problem
that
for
could be
me
a
is
dark
actually
horse.
the early games, because I think that they are a team that once they've seen what everyone's running, they're very good at prepping, they're very good at countering, and they have a decent amount of firepower. I think Leo is going to be a standout for people who don't already know who he is. He's world class, and Trex is super explosive. So if he can get off on the right, I think they can do some damage. The problem is in those early games, you got a lot of young players going to LAN, and they can't directly counter a lot of these teams because I think everybody's going to switch things up after the first couple of weeks. So I think that they could go quite far into the tournament, but to Dark Horse to win, I'd be surprised.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. I'm picking him anyway. Fuck yeah. Give him my dark horse here. I love Coldamenta. I think he's awesome.
Yeah.
This team obviously looked pretty good in regionally, but they're not the favorite team out of their region, so I think that qualifies.
No.
So I'm gonna give it to Gil. But I'll be honest with you guys, I fucking picked the team. I picked the team. All right,
Okay, that's
we're
fine.
gonna come up. We'll give them time to put it in. We're going to come back after the break. We're going to talk with Mini Jake and Enzo from Fnatic, because obviously it's a good time to be a Fnatic fan. I'm really curious to hear about just what their last few months has actually been like, right? Because we've seen changes. Don't forget, I mean, they had Magnum and Doma. They dropped them after getting great success with them. And, you know, we've seen coaching changes and stuff. So great opportunity after the break to hear from Fnatic, Mini Jake, and Enzo. Don't go too far. If you're enjoying Valoranting, feel free to follow us on our other socials. We're over at Twitter at Valoranting, and of course, every Tuesday, 11 a.m. PT, we're live on twitch.tv/DNP. We have an opportunity here to welcome our special guests to the show. Huge shout out, by the way, to these two for making time to chat with us, obviously, because it's busy right now in the lead up to Copenhagen. So big shout out to Enzo and Coach Mini for joining us, guys. Thank you so much for coming on the show. We appreciate your time.
Hey,
Hello,
nice
guys.
to be on.
Listen, I mean, we're looking forward to picking your brains a little bit, especially about, you know, what's ahead, but also kind of what's behind you, because I think one of the most compelling storylines about your team, this Fnatic team, and I'll probably aim this question first at Mini, is that, you know, you were already a roster that was really impressing a lot of people. You were getting a lot of value out of your core. But I'm curious to, you know, talk about sort of the change, the course correction you made, you know, with your roster right after Champions. You know, with Magnum and Doma, you know, stepping aside and this sort of new roster look. I'd love to know, like, how we sort of came to that decision, maybe what you feel like you were looking to add to the team, and sort of how you managed to achieve that. Because I
Talk
think
about
it's
the
safe to
list,
say,
Mini. Talk about the list.
it's worked out, hasn't it? So, well, what are your thoughts on that, bro?
So I mean, the Doma changes after Champions, and the Magnum changes a bit later. So
Yep.
I guess it's like having like a good, like I have a fairly decent understanding of our team's kind of strengths and weaknesses, and like I feel like some other teams maybe they don't quite want to take risks. And like I guess like my philosophy a little bit is that this is a very new game, and if there are opportunities to find players that potentially like franchise level players like right
Mhm.
now in these first couple of years, then we should be like finding those players right now and kind of building towards that time frame, if you know what I mean. Because we don't want to wait around and get to that point and then suddenly looking at CS salaries, looking at CS buyouts. Like we want to find those players that are right for a roster right now. So that's kind of like where I stood on it, and I think that that's kind of like where Fnatic stood on it when they picked us up originally. Like when Colin picked us up, it was pretty much like, right, we picked you up, but like we're probably not 100% sure that this is going to be the full core for the next like 2 years or so. But I think that like me and Bosa's like relationship was a big identity point, and a core strength that they wanted to build around basically. So yeah, so specifically with like Doma Magnum, it was just like I think Doma culturally just didn't fit us very well, but like him as a player, he's like fantastic and still like owning it in the VRL scene. And I'm sure that Mad Lions are a shoe-in for the franchise league probably. And then with Magnum, there was just like it was more like a team thing rather than him specifically.
Dope.
One sec.
Oh, it's
Yeah,
still
sorry
working.
about that. I
You're
think
still working,
we
yeah.
lost you here in Discord,
Can you
but
still hear me? Sorry.
your,
sorry.
Now we can
your
hear
answer
you,
went
yeah,
out to VMix. We obviously, unfortunately, didn't get much of it. But
I was just gonna finish lip reading and be like, okay.
I'll let you
Where
summarize
did you
that bit
stop?
for
Where did you
us.
stop? Where did I stop?
You were talking about obviously
franchise
trying
players.
to, yeah, striking while the iron's hot and trying to avoid obviously like exorbitant buyouts and salaries.
Yeah,
Yeah,
trying
yeah.
to solidify your roster.
So like even like I was then going on to say like even like when Fnatic picked up as originally, like we were one of the only teams that was picked up as like a big core. Like our whole team was picked up by an org, whereas like during that time frame, like orgs were like picking players and building the team. So like Fnatic picked us up, and it was like me and Bosa's kind of relationship that they were kind of building around, I think, to some degree. So like they even told us like we don't expect this roster to last like 2 years, 3 years. Like we expect to kind of be changing things around a little bit. So I think there was like a very compatible relationship between Fnatic and kind of my understanding of an early esports title.
Yeah.
And then specifically with the players, like Doma, for instance, like I think culturally just didn't fit very well with our team, but like he's a great player. Like in the VRL scene, he's like absolutely destroying it with Mad Lions right now, and they're like a shoe-in to franchise next year, so he's doing quite well still. And then with Magnum, it was more like an overall team thing, I'd say. Like Magnum's still a great player; he's like VCT caliber for sure, but like the kind of balance on the team was a little bit off, I think. And like I said, like we needed a bit more firepower, and someone like Alpha just came in and kind of you can see like how good he is, you know.
Yeah.
I kind of want to direct this the other way because I feel like everybody's asked Mini what the new player, what he thinks of his new players or the people he's picked up. Now, obviously, Enzo, your previous coach was a man who was meant to be here today, but decided to skive off. So I want to know the comparisons of what it was like working under someone like Mitch Man and now working under a good coach like Mini.
Unlucky for Mitch, man.
He skived off, is what he gets.
That was a bomb. Oh my god, sorry, Mitch. Right. So I had so far on Valorant, I would say 3 coaches. I had Mitchman, Dismo, and Mini, and all three of them have a different way to work and a different, a different coaching style, I would say. Like for example, Desmo was more oriented towards the mechanics of the game, like the individual mechanics, like how to move together precisely, how to take space and stuff. Whereas Mini is much more focused on the macro and like the strategic aspect of what's gonna happen during that map. You know, Mini is not going to focus on what a player should do mechanically because he's focusing on something else. He's like he has the broader picture in mind. And Mitchman, sorry. Yeah, I mean, Mitchman was an analyst with us, so it was again something different, and like you have like a lot of different styles for every coach. I don't think a style is better than another. I just think that it depends on what your team needs. Sometimes your team is gonna need someone who has a lot of advice to give you mechanically for every player, so that the micro is much better, And sometimes you need a coach who's going to focus only on the tactical aspect of things. And yeah, that's basically it. Like everyone is very different. It only depends on what your team needs to improve and move on.
Actually, based on that, then, if you have, you've gone through 3 coaches so far, and everybody coaches differently or has a different view towards the game. What are the best out of every single one that you still keep with you today as you're playing with Fnatic right now that you think could improve your style and improve the team style?
Well, from the point of view of the Fnatic roster, we need Coach Mini right now. We need the guy who is going to focus on the tactical aspect.
I just said that.
Yeah, I mean, of course, like that's what we need in the team, because the job he's doing right now is so productive for all of us, and it fits the balance of the team. Our team is super balanced. We have everything we need to function properly, you know. So yeah, my answer is Coach Mini, of course.
Unlucky Mitch.
I mean, I think this ties in really nicely then if we go the other way again. Let's talk, Mini, let's talk a little bit about Enzo and Alphayear. And, you kind of touched a little bit on the firepower aspect that Alphayear brings in here. But I'm curious to think sort of, how the team as a whole maybe sort of feels different now with these players. Obviously, there's a format and there's a structure you want to integrate them into, but they bring their own individual flares, things that you also want to leverage, to make the team even better. So curious to know from your perspective, like, between the two of them, what new elements are we seeing being added to your arsenal here with this new Fnatic look?
I mean, for a very long time, we've tried to find, like, even back when we made the roster changes for Durka and Magnum, like, our ideal situation was to find someone with lots of firepower and find someone who was like a secondary IGL, someone with a bit more experience. And like back then, that was just impossible to find. And it's like really, really hard to find. Like, it's almost like how finding an IGL was hard, like finding like a secondary IGL or like someone with a bit more leadership capabilities is really hard too. But I think Enzo is basically that player. And I think Alphayear is also that player with the firepower that we were looking for like a year ago, So, yeah, that's what they bring. So Alphayear is just straight up just a mechanical monster. And then Enzo comes in as a more kind of experienced player with a bit more kind of leadership skills. But I also do think that Enzo is like severely underrated in terms of firepower. Like when we picked him up, like people were like kind of underrating him, I think. And I'm glad that in officials he showed that like he's not just some like boomer old man who's just like there to like support the boys. Like he's actually got chops of his own,
Yeah.
I think the main thing I really want to add to this though, because I asked you this, I think after week 1, I would like, did you expect Alphayear to be this good? Because he's now done it week to week consistently, different agents, shown depth in pool. He's only just turned 17 and seemingly he's just helped you guys almost speed run EMEA from start to finish. Like, did you actually think when you picked him up off your little list, you went, oh, like this guy looks quite good, that he's going to come in and do that?
Not really. I mean, originally we picked him up as a chamber player too, so it was like, I guess my expectations shifted a little bit when we just, because like basically we asked Durka if he wanted to play Raze or chamber once we picked him up. And Alphayear was just like, I don't really care, just let Durka do whatever. So yeah, Durka gets to do what he wants basically. So and then yeah, so I don't know how I expected him to play on Raze. I presumed he would be a bit more inconsistent on the Raze because he didn't play it as much. But no, it's a bit surprising that he like slammed almost every single game. I think like in the final, like he started off on split a little bit slow, and I was like, okay, this is his game where he's going to be a bit slow. And then I pressed tab on the half, and he had like 25 kills. Like, I can't like. He's not going to.
The last game was the one where you thought he might start a bit slow.
Yeah.
Like all the other games, you're like, nah, he got it, he's fine.
Actually, I might sidetrack a bit, but to stay on topic with Alphayear, because I saw that maybe even yesterday or before yesterday, he tweeted out that there was going to be, or he had some issues to like try to get his visa on time to go to Denmark, because apparently where he was trying to go to get his visa, the place burned down. So do you have any updates of what's going on with Alphayear and the status and how Fnatic's going to look? Are you going to have your 5 going in, or is it going to be like, ah, shit, we're going to have somebody in the hotel room chilling out again?
No, like we're pretty confident that he's going to be there. Like really confident. There was a bit of a scare like a week or so ago.
Yeah.
Where like if we didn't make first seed, like me and Colin were a bit worried. So like we didn't tell the boys anything, but like secretly I was like really hoping we get first seed, so there's a bit more time. But no, it should be fine. Like
awesome.
It's crazy that he turned up and the place is just like burned down or something though.
That is actually fucking mental.
Like yeah, like why us? Like again, like it was just like crazy because we've had like a rough year for that kind of stuff.
Who's sabotaging you? Who's doing it? That's the thing.
Back in 2012,
NA.
it was about DDoSing online matches in Counter Strike. Now it's
Phoenix
just
is
like
burned,
RL
just
shit
saying.
with COVID, like or like burning down buildings just to like sabotage Fnatic. So that's pretty crazy. But yeah, so what's it been like for you, Mini JK? Because you were talking about you and Boaster when you guys were Summon FC. You were looking for an organization to approach you, and then you had conversations with Fnatic. What basically sold you the vision of Fnatic? That's going to be this is the org that we want to build our career and build our ideal Valorant roster with.
I mean, I always tell this story when I'm around asked that like me and Jake were like, we didn't know what we were doing back then really, so we like talked to like an agent just to see if there was like anything they could shed light on, and
Yeah.
we ended up not like signing with anyone, but like they were like, oh, who would you want to join? And like we both said Fnatic, and like the agent just like laughed at us, and we're just like, wait, what? And they're like, you're just never gonna do that. You're not good enough. Or like they were like, you're not big enough. And like now
Yeah.
Boast is like one of the biggest faces in Valorant, and we're like one of the best teams in the world. So
Yeah.
so that was just like weird. But yeah, I think it's just like my understanding. Like I'm a Counter-Strike guy. Like
Yeah.
like Fnatic to me represents quite a lot of like good things in Counter-Strike. And then like
course.
Boast is like was Counter-Strike, but also was into League, and like he liked like the League of Legends team. So I think there was just like a brand affinity to some degree. And then like I also just know that like behind the scenes Karen did quite a lot of work, and like having like an older guy like him running things on the pro gaming side of things like is a pretty good person to have. So it felt like a pretty safe option. As well, they're based in London, which is where me and Boaster live, so it just made a lot of sense.
Makes sense. Yeah.
And me.
I was and Tom, yeah, I guess whatever. Pump your tires. Big shout out, by the way, to Magnum in the chat. Magnum just hopped in and said he's the one that visited Ishmir and made revenge and burned down the building. but Magnum's been doing very, very well with Koi, so really happy that players are still able to bounce back and do very well here after moving onwards with Fnatic. So big shout out, Magnum.
Obviously, like, I think it's really interesting, Mini, how you talk about your agent kind of scoffing at the idea of you joining such a sort of quote unquote big brand, right? Because there's such a huge reputation with Fnatic, and that's there for a reason. Obviously, it's a really grueling campaign, getting through like a VCT, getting through group stages, getting through playoffs, securing that seed. I'm curious to know about like what what support staff you guys have available to on this roster, like what you guys have to draw upon, because we constantly hear from so many pro players and teams, just, it's tough. You've got to adapt so quickly. You really need like strong analyst core. You need a lot of feedback loop, support staff in general. Like, tell us what Fnatic offers you guys in the way of that.
So Fnatic has its own little marketed thing called like the HPU, which is like a high performance unit, they call it. And it's more like focused on like our performance. So like I'm the coach for all the in-game stuff. And then we have a performance coach called Marcus who deals with everything like I call it outside the server basically. So he's like always in like he joins us every single day, watches our scrims, like kind of monitors the mood levels and all that kind of stuff. And just like he's just like a good leadership figure to have around to make sure that like as like a third party kind of outside perspective, he's able to kind of keep relationship with the boys and like make sure they're kind of sleeping well and just like eating well and they're just like in a good spot. I think, to be honest, like talking about Marcus is probably better to ask Enzo about a little bit, because obviously like Enzo deals with him more one-on-one than I would. Like behind the scenes, obviously I talk with Marcus quite a lot, but I don't experience his impact as much as the players would, So I would say that Marcus is really big for our team. I don't know if there's many other teams that kind of focus on that side of the game as much. Like, so I think it's a pretty good thing to have. And then like it's just me on the strategy side of things. So like we had Anders before for a little bit, but it just didn't really work out. Like I think Anders is a really great guy. I think he's really, really smart, and I think he fits more the head coach role, I would say, is kind of what I would say.
Yeah.
Nice.
So basically at the start of the year, me and Jake, it was basically like, well, we could find another analyst or we could find like a strategic coach. And I was like, let's wait. And like me and you have to like rebuild our own system. And then we'll see what we need like towards the end of the year. And then we'll kind of find someone who will come into that system once we kind of build it out again.
Yeah,
So like it's been a bit of an exploration for me and both to kind of rekindle our little like strategy relationship again. So yeah, so it's been working well, but I think that me and Jake, it's a big strain on both of us because like, other teams have got like 2 or 3 people like doing stuff, and it's just me and him doing everything right now. Really, like the boys do their own stuff, but in terms of just strategy, it's like me and Jake, like 99%. You know, so yeah, so we'll be looking for someone for next year probably. But yeah, the performance side, like Marcus is like a really big part of the team that like doesn't get talked about very much, but is definitely there. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, I kind of wanted to follow up on that with Viroth a little bit because it's like I feel like you've now been through a bit of NIP, Alliance, obviously a huge org, fear. But the thing I kind of want to ask you is, are there any major differences while coming into Fnatic or things that the other teams have done as well that like helped you move forward as a player? Because you have had quite a growth, especially over the last like year or so.
There was different assets that helped us a lot in the team, especially at Alliance. Like I grew a lot as a player at Alliance because when you have someone like Loda next to you every time you bootcamp, you know Loda, the Dota player.
Yeah.
That guy has a lot of great advice to give you, and to be honest, I had a lot of one-on-ones with him just for myself to improve as a team player, you know. And these were extremely productive for me. But yeah, that's the thing. You also have like people like Marcus, but both at NIP and Alliance. These were people that I would say like I would talk to them once a week, you know. And now, like having right now at Fnatic a performance coach that is working with you every single day. Like he knows what's going on. He knows everything. He's there, you know. He's listening to us every single day.
Watching you.
Yeah, he can see the like the good things. He can see the bad things. He can make us talk with each other. He can, or at least help it, you know, because we can do it by ourselves. But he can help things out. Um, and he's giving us advice whenever we need something. Like he's here daily with us, and that's a big difference maker. Like that is a huge difference maker. That's what I can say from like for Marcus at least. Like since I work with him, I have improved on a lot of daily things that help you actually win games in the end.
Nice. And to continue along with the supporting staff, and I want to try to dig deeper into like the definition of mini Jake. What do you think about the analyst role is, right? For example, you brought in Anders before for champions. We saw some great stuff cooked up for Fracture, for example, when you guys premiered the Astra and the Rays. But then, if you're telling me that Anders has more of a role to be a head coach, what is exactly the definition of an analyst, and what do you look for exactly within the analyst itself? Because for me, I look at people that are trying to do analysts sometimes, and they just go on run it back. They download the fucking profile of the 10 seconds plant when people are coming in, and they're giving this to people.
This is Vansilli.
I want to be
this
analyst.
is Vansilli. He's talking about himself.
I don't want to be an analyst. I watch enough VODs as it is. I don't want to watch more, so I do not want to be an analyst. But what do you look for here, Mini Jake?
So basically, my answer would have changed like 20 times in the past year. So it's like really difficult to like really give you a great one. But I think that I guess what I mean by head coach is like I think Andrew's got a strong vision about the game.
Yeah.
And I think that he should be the one kind of leading that vision. And I think our team, it's more about kind of me supporting Boaster's vision more, I guess. I also do make sure to tell him an idiot when he's being an idiot, but like generally speaking, like it's a lot of coming from him, because he's just so creative, and like I just need, like, he's the most creative probably brain in Valorant right now, so I just need to make sure that it's just as long as he's not going off too far, like I just need
Yoru
to
Icebox?
trap. What's that? Icebox? Well,
Yoru
I guess
Icebox
that's
maybe?
more- No. Okay, so like it's like I don't know how to. He's creative within the bounds which I let him be creative. You know?
You have.
That's what you're saying.
Yeah, he has a bit of a leash, so
Nice.
I mean,
Ah,
in the
you wear
back in
the
the day, he
trousers.
didn't have so much of a leash, but like now I'm like, I think like after we failed for the qualifier for Berlin last year, I kind of like stepped up a bit more and was like, look, like I think I got more to input here, and I want to kind of input more. So that's when I stepped up a bit more into kind of saying no a bit more and kind of working closer with him, I guess. But yeah, I think for the question about like staff, like I think it's a pretty vague thing. I don't think there's going to be like great answers to this, but I would say generally the analyst is probably going to look more at data. An assistant coach is probably going to look more macro and work with players more. And I think the head coach is the one that's kind of more just like the vision, I
You're a
guess, and
conduit for a lot
philosophy.
of that. Yeah. You need to
Yeah.
pass the raw data to a degree, right? And see if it sort of matches up with that sort of vision or
Yeah.
yeah.
So I think like when we picked up Anders, it was like I knew that Anders had like stats that he could bring that like me and Bosa never really worked with stats before. And like Anders' stats are just like the best in the game essentially. So like it was very interesting to work with him and see like how he used them and how we could like benefit from them. And like, you know, I think we mostly agreed with things, me and him. I think that there was like some things were like, you know, he's probably a bit more stats oriented than I would be in certain things, but generally speaking, like we had a good relationship on
I
that
mean,
front. And
the guy comes from private equity, you know, and
yeah,
he's just like, I sat and had dinner with him and had him sort of talk through his mindset to me. And it's like, I mean, the guy creates algorithms to try and pass out like a lot of, you know, and a lot of data and understanding of the game. And I think, you know, it gives him such a strong idea of what he wants to see. And when that idea comes up against maybe, you know, so you have an idea that's heavily backed by stats, another idea that's heavily backed by intuition or creativity. It's like it can maybe be hard to sort of bridge that gap a little bit.
Mhm.
But I kind of liked how you brought up sort of Boaster's role here, and I want to talk to Enzo about this because obviously, Enzo, you come into the Fnatic roster in pretty short notice for Masters 1, and there's obviously a structure there to sort of adapt to, and obviously, you know, as Minnie's talked about, like, you know, facilitating Boaster's vision and sort of, you know, having everybody integrate. How was that, you know, coming into the team? Because I don't think there are too many teams that are led so strongly from that IGL position. I think some teams are more like more emphasis on the coach to dispense that vision. So how was that for you coming in and sort of, you know, was it easy to get on board with Boaster's idea? Did you have to look at things from a different perspective? How did that transition go for you?
Yeah, it was very easy. Like I had Iceland with them, so I had time to get to know them all. Like and
Mhm.
yeah, to be honest, Boaster's idea are not complicated ideas. You know, they're efficient ideas. Like he has so many very creative ideas. Like and he's working so much, and it's not something to like I don't know how to say, but they're very efficient and simple ideas, and then you apply them. He has a lot of content, a lot of like he knows the lineups for everyone, for example. That's the thing, you know. And my role in the team was given to me by Mini and Boaster together. I also asked them a lot of questions about what they need and what they precisely want from me. And right now, I'm doing a lot of different things in the team, um, like one of the things I do is basically make things easy for Boaster, make things easier. So in game, sometimes a little bit outside of the game, but mostly in game about some specific informations about some specific weaknesses in the enemy team, like so that he can make the actual right call on the fly. Sometimes I'm also the one leading the attack trio because some micro movements, some micro decisions that he cannot make from his position, someone has to make them, and I can, as the initiator, make those decisions for the team. You know, and I have the skills to do it. Like that's completely fine. One of the things I do in the team is also just refresh all the basic things, all the basic principles, all the fundamentals that a team needs to win a game. Sometimes things that are very, very basic, but just refreshing them with an open mind and just, working on these things and making sure everybody follows these things. Eventually, you end up with a team that is more disciplined and plays situations in a better way. So that's what I do with the team. Again, another thing that I would do in the team kind of every day is just work on the awareness of everyone in the team, like the in-game awareness, like the comms, some small details here and there, on all these small points. When you add them up in the end, you just improve, that's what I do. So I would say you cannot summarize my role in one sentence,
Uh-huh.
but I do a lot of small things in the team, and that's my role. That's a second IGL role, I would say. Like I don't have a huge tactical influence on what's going on, but I do give feedback, I do give advice, and sometimes I challenge things and be like, okay, is that really the good thing to do when that and that and that happens on the round? That's pretty much it.
Awesome. I actually wanted to take that part of what you were talking about, like almost being second IGL, almost talking about the attacker side sometimes and leading the team. And it's a question to both you, Enzo, and Mini Jake. Starting with this is what is actually like the flow, how it goes into communication within a match itself. Because, for example, I play with the Plat Chat boys, and we're playing an online league, and every time we win a round or we lose a round, all 5 of us fucking start talking to be like, this was good, this was bad, we should do this, we should do that. Then there's fucking 5 seconds left, and then Sideshow has no time to fucking call his strat. So whoever's not IGLing or not being IGL, the other 3 just have to be quiet and listen to the game and listen to the strats the whole time? And then when do you actually take these notes down and chime in to be like, okay, we need a timeout, and it's my turn to talk as a coach, so that everything flows back into pieces to be able to win a match? So I know it's I'll start off with you, Enzo, to try to answer that out, and then get on to Mini Jake.
Our comms, or I would say any pro team's comms, are very different, like depending on the team first. But I would say on Valorant, there is so many things to take into account that it's rarely just the IGL micromanaging everything. This is not really possible right now. So to talk about the comms, I would say like freeze time. Sometimes on defense, you're gonna have the Sentinel guy talking about where he wants to play, for example, and then you're gonna have like a setup that is called by the IGL, and then everybody can talk about what he's going to do precisely, like during the round, like like as an anti-rush, like what setup you're going to have. On attack, it's again very different because like you have so many things to talk about during the freeze time, and then mid-round, like mid-round, it's not only the IGL talking. Like everybody can say something about how he wants to take that position, like peek when I shoot, or flash for me, stuff like this. Like so many things happen. And what I believe in, at least on Valorant, is that if everybody can give a little bit of information, some critical information about what's going on his side of the map, this information can lead to a very good call from the IGL. So it's like a round is a dynamic conversation between all the players that have the most information, so that the IGL can make a proper decision. And sometimes, you know what? Sometimes a guy on the edge of the map can actually lead the team. Like that guy has a timing, he's taking that timing, he can tell all the team, okay, come back to me now. I actually have sight. I'm gonna get a kill here. Come back, come back to C or something. And yeah, that's comms are a complicated things, but it's definitely a skill to work on within a team.
Interesting.
Yeah, I think Vansilli, what you were saying about like kind of like freeze time management is like something that I think Anders helped us quite a bit with when he was around, and I think we've slipped a little bit, to be quite honest. It was like a priority list of like, you want to look at the alts first, then the economy kind of thing. Well, the economy first, then the alts. And so like if you go through that checklist as the IGL, then it like kind of simplifies the call, because obviously you don't have to think about the default patterns if essentially they're on eco, or you know what I mean? Like
I see.
you don't have to think about the default patterns as much if there's like 3 big alts on your side, or there's 3 big alts on their side. Like those things kind of dictate the calls more than a default pattern would. And then like after that, then you start thinking about your default patterns and their default patterns, and trying to like do the kind of 4D chess, angel versus boaster kind of stuff, So yeah. But in the freeze time, like I think with this roster right now, I think it's good that like I think Dirk has always been someone who's been quite good and vocal about like, I think I got to read, like definitely just do this, let me do this kind of thing. I think Enzo is another player now who's a bit more vocal about like, oh, it feels weaker over here, like maybe we'll do this kind of thing. I think like the more we kind of emphasize on that in the team and let all the players make those reads, like, and get them to the point where they understand all these little things, and it would just make Jake's job a lot easier. Like if everyone could do it, I think that's why Optic are probably a very good team, because I think that they've got a bit more tactical FPS experience than our team does, and I think that like they have 5 players who probably are always inputting the FNS to be like, okay, B main, they're not doing anything this week, we can just walk in, explode kind of thing. And I think that that's something that our team will be working on more. Yeah.
So one of the things I wanted to ask you, Mini, is that obviously we know that you're going into that sort of top half. You got a little bit longer to prep, ready for the event. What is the road looking like from here out? Like, is there a boot camp? Are you bringing in certain people ready for certain points, or is it just we're just gonna like relax a little bit and then get ready in a week or so?
So I mean, we just had to take a break, to be quite honest, like this week. So this week we're taking a break, and it's like the first break I've had like for.
And you're on this show.
I don't know. This is my break, Tom. Like, yeah.
That was like Enzo last week.
Yeah. So yeah, we just need to take a bit of a break, a breather, and then we're gonna go to Copenhagen, I think next Monday or Tuesday, and then start a little boot camp there, and then go into the kind of Riot boot camp, because obviously we boot camp a little bit at the event before the event. Like all the teams have to go before, so we'll be boot camping just before, and then extending that on into the kind of hotel room, kind of LAN room stuff. So yeah, so that's our plan in terms of like. I've been thinking about getting some help maybe, but I'm not sure we need it. So
okay.
So just a quick follow-up.
That's not like a cocky thing. It's more like
I know.
You're allowed to be cocky, Mini Jake.
I mean, it
You're allowed
takes
to be
work
cocky.
to
You're
integrate
number
new
one in
pieces
EMEA
into
right
your
now.
structure anyway. It's actually is at the start. It takes more effort to bring people in that eventually would help.
That's kind of like what I'm thinking. I think like the way me and Jake anti-strat teams is like done in a way that doesn't really need someone else's support as much. And I was thinking maybe we get someone to help. Maybe if there's like that pro map coming in, like maybe someone to kind of feed us some theory whilst we're kind of busy. Like maybe that's the vibe. I'm not sure though. Like something I'm thinking about a little bit. Like maybe we'll have someone help us for some prep or something. But yeah, right now there's not like a big plan. So yeah, just a boot camp.
The follow-up I had was you've kind of obviously you're skipping at this point into that latter stages. A lot of teams have sort of talked about whether or not that's actually an advantage based off being able to play some of the earlier games. Obviously for last time and now this time for Alfie's sort of visa situation is probably quite helpful. But for you as a team, do you think that will actually be an advantage getting to watch everyone else, or would you have rather sort of almost played yourself good, I guess?
I don't think it matters that much. I just think it's a safety net that like you've got further into the tournament. And usually like I wouldn't take that mindset. But I think with the champions points being quite tight in the EMEA right now, I think it gives us an extra safety net that like in case Guild or FPX drop a bit early, it might just secure us champs straight off the bat. But yeah, I don't know really. Like I don't think our team was like traditionally the team that did really well at LAN. Until we had to have like 2 subs last time, so
until Enzo, obviously.
Yeah, until Enzo came along, ruined. No, yeah. So I don't really know my perspective, and I don't think it matters that much. I would prefer just to be in the open bracket already, just chill, get a bit of a breather. Yeah, I think that's what most people would prefer, to be honest. Yeah.
I'm curious to see like what your thoughts are on heading into like a I would say it's a quasi live event, right? We have a crowd there, and it's going to be 2,000 people, still enough to make a bit of a racket here. Have you guys talked about that? Like how different it's going to be? Have you sort of shared your expectations amongst the team? Do you have any in terms of like how you need to account for that when the time comes to get out on the stage?
No, we've literally had like one debriefing just after our FPX game. And that wasn't part of that briefing. So like, I think it's something we'll talk about when we're back together a little bit, maybe on the weekend. I think it's something that Marcus will probably have quite a lot of input onto. I think there was a meme yesterday that someone at the office was like, because we got a few Fnatic people coming up to Denmark for the boot camp, that they were going to stand behind us and like pretend to cheer and stuff. And I was like, that's not good. Just don't do that, please. So yeah, so it's being thought about a little bit, but yeah, I think the bracket, those 2 questions you just made, like the bracket thing, maybe it will have an impact just because the crowd, like maybe the crowd will have some kind of impact and getting used to that crowd. Maybe is something, but I'm not.
But that's only in the late playoffs anyway.
Oh,
so
okay.
The last 3 days. Difference.
Oh yeah.
I mean, they're still gonna be there. It's
just outside. Let me in.
I mean, I quickly follow up on that real quick. What's the coaching setup gonna be like? Do you know how much like how tied in you're going to be, like what the comms are like, how often you can talk, because this has been like discussed tons, right?
Yeah.
In the
the-
basement again.
You mean
Yo,
like how long
Mini,
the walk
how
is
much
this
how
thing?
much are you gonna have to run if we
Yeah.
win or lose? Yeah.
I was like so depressing when we lost the game because I like my shoes being off. So like I had my shoes off and like we just lost. And like the person was like, "You gotta come now, you gotta come now." And we just lost, and I'm just like looking at her, just like, "Just leave me alone, please." We just
Yeah.
like, lost a massive game. So I don't know anything about the coaching side whatsoever.
Okay.
Like I'm presuming based off of feedback last time that like they're gonna do their best to like make it a bit better. But I think they
Yeah.
were kind of screwed at the last event because they didn't have the spaces available that they should have had. They
Yeah.
had to do some makeshifting. So it's just a bit unfortunate, really. I think they understand that the thing is important. It was just
Yeah.
a practical thing.
Until that meme from Kaplan, as we just see right now, as he's running towards his team after seeing XQQ just running a whole lap to get to his team as well with these victories.
He did it in
from,
a suit as well. Man was
Exactly.
well dressed.
It was warm. It was warm. It seems.
was
But
impressive.
yeah.
I think
What's
that was
it
after
like?
beating us.
Yeah. Unlucky.
You can
Unlucky.
see me in the background just being depressed.
We don't want to mention that. Let's not find that clip, Daniel. But Enzo, what's it like for you to actually be able to play in front of a crowd? Are you feeling nervous? How do you like calm the situation down? How do you prep yourself for that as well to be able to play in front of a
Just
crowd?
take the picture of Mitch and use it to calm your nerves, or
Pretty much.
right here. Yeah, it's obviously for me that's a dream. Like
Mhm.
also making champions is a dream and playing in front of a huge crowd. But this is not really something that changes like the way you perceive the game. It's like
Yeah.
I will just focus up and get myself into my zone like I always do and play, and that's pretty much it. And enjoy it more because there's a crowd. That's
Yeah.
pretty much it.
So it pumps
And
you
I
even
wanna-
more.
Yeah, we will have a
Yeah.
talk with all the team, obviously, because that was the initial question. Like, how do we deal with it, especially when you have a young guy like Alpha here, Like, remember, he's 17. He was 16 a few days ago, So, yeah, that's new for him, obviously. But we will have a talk with him. We will help him because we have in the past already experienced that kind of like event with a crowd, like some of us in the team. So, that's something that we are going to share with him, and it will be easy. Alpha here is adapting to everything super fast, so it will be easy.
Yeah. I kind of want to go in. You talked about being in the zone. I want to go into your zone for a second here, Enzo. Nothing sus. Just want to know a little bit about a round you played out here.
We're going into the end zone. Get it?
The end zone. That's pretty good,
Oh,
actually.
no.
I'm actually. You know what? I'll give it to you. Usually
Thanks,
good
man.
jokes are dog shit. That one. Solid. Obviously, FPX. It's like you had this insane clutch round. Sort of in round 11 here, I think it was. Obviously, it's in like a 1v5 for you. Can you talk us through this?
Yeah, my team dies pretty fast. I am obviously the one behind initially, like initiating that area take, so I am far away. Then I have to cross a smoke. I kill 2 after they die, and I instantly felt the trust of my team. Nobody was like giving bad info or complaining or anything. It was just
Mhm.
like proper information telling me what's going on, and I was just focused on my crosshair and killed them. And then after I see no one shot, I decide that okay, maybe there's actually someone behind me right now. So I just turn around and kill that killjoy. Then I know Omen is on A site. I can go plant, and I decide to plant very open for garage, Silong, and lower, like city spawn. So right now he has no clue, absolutely no clue about where I am. And then I'm like, okay, I could just peek and try to kill him, but it's an Omen. He's gonna smoke. I'm gonna try to peek before he smokes. But then once he smokes and taps the spike, I'm like, okay, I have utility. I'm a Sova, So I'm gonna use everything I have and make sure I don't do any flashy plays really. I just play to win it, I have utility. If here I don't tag him with a drone, I would have actually used my ult at this point because
I was gonna
this
say
round,
it's last
yeah,
round.
yeah, of course. This round matters so much that it was worth it to use the ult if I don't tag him with the drone. And yeah, and eventually I won it. And then the next round I clutch it again, and it's wow. I think we got some momentum out of these 2 clutches for the rest
Nice.
of the game.
That's awesome. Anyway,
Yeah.
you talked about the momentum and giving also like respect to your opponents, even though they're like on a lower buy, you're out on a 1v1, you want to spend everything. And I want to go back as well to Mini Jake. You were talking about even giving praise to Optic and to having like 5 guys that have tactical FPS experience. Yeah, that was a nice shot. With tactical FPS experience with Counter-Strike. I want to know then if you think that this is like the base fundamentals potentially of being a very good team from the get-go going into Masters 2. Who's going to be your strongest opponent going into, or the one you're going to look out for the most, or do you think that's going to give you the most trouble?
Well, have you even had time to prep? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
even
obviously
this is
They've
your
already
break,
played
you
all
know?
their toughest opponents. They did that last week.
I mean, I'm not sure who the toughest would be. I guess Optic are still like the favorite.
Didn't even win an A.
So I think that like Optic obviously, and then like I guess the narrative from the last event was that the quote unquote minor regions are no longer minor regions. So I guess there's gonna be like stuff around the world that like I've not been tuned into as much because obviously we've been busy playing. And no, like in terms of like prep, like we finished the FPX game and we did an hour of debrief and I've not touched anything to do with Valorant. Like, so no, I've not looked at anything. Like, I don't think right now we would prep anyway. To be honest, like, I'll start maybe having a look around because I don't even really know who's actually qualified. To be honest, I've not. I know Loud qualified. I know Optic and Exet did.
HyperX.
So how much less leap are you gonna have compared to everybody else in the team having to prep for all of these teams? Like, at what point is it gonna be? I don't have time to try to anti-strat all these teams anymore and try to just build.
Are we not already there?
Yeah.
I think.
I don't know.
Are you guys thinking that I wouldn't? I'm not gonna prep for every team. Like I'm gonna prep when we kind of know.
Who will you not prep for?
What does that mean?
That is, there's no way.
Who do you disrespect?
Do not answer that
enough
question.
not to
I am your attorney, Jake. You don't have to answer that question.
I've never. I think the last time I didn't prep for a team was so long ago because like the level of competition we've had to play in is just like too high, you know. So I can't remember the last time I've not prepped to get like our Discord channel is a joke. You just scroll down, and it's just infinite anti-strats. It's just like so many. So no, I like the way we anti-strat isn't to like we won't be looking at stuff too much now. Like I'll have a gist of like, oops, sorry, like the map vetoes that like might like what are the important maps at this event? Like is there like generally speaking, are like all the regions good at like bind, for instance? And does that mean we need to kind of like make sure our bind is looking better? Like, can we float breeze because there's less teams playing breeze? Like that's the kind of general kind of wide picture prep I might start doing. But in terms of like looking specifically at teams, like I'm not going to look too much right now. Like I might for some fun, but yeah, more just the general, you know. Until we really know who's going to come out of that bracket, and I don't think we'll even know until like a day before or so, or maybe like a few days before. That game,
that's
you know,
right.
so.
You won't. I mean, that's you kind of can watch everybody, but like prepping for a specific team until like the day before just doesn't. It's like a waste of energy, right? Doesn't really make a lot of sense. Sure. Well, look, guys, thanks so much for coming on the show. I think we had a great chance to kind of get an idea of like what the vibes are, and I think like everyone's always curious about how like on short notice, you know, new players in the roster get integrated, and especially because you guys turned your results around. Well, not turn it around. You just continued your trend of great results so quickly. I think that's what's made, you know, Fnatic and sort of the structure of your team so interesting. So thanks so much both of you for taking the time to talk to us, and best of luck in Copenhagen, guys.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having
us.
Yeah.
Thank you guys. Thank you guys.
Yeah. Been a great time.
If you've enjoyed the show, please like and subscribe, and make sure you hit the bell for the future noties, but also comment below with what you'd like to see in our future shows.
So to quote Coach Mini Jake earlier on, sort of repeating the narrative that we had last Masters, with there are sort of quote unquote no minor regions anymore. At least that was definitely the sentiment, right? We saw so many of our APAC teams, especially, and obviously Loud, really make deep runs into that bracket in playoffs. One of the most hype Valorant events, I think the most hype Valorant event we've ever seen, occurred over in Japan, right? For their playoffs. Zeta Division, Northeption in a fucking massive arena. This is a regional final, for fuck's sake. Incredible scenes. And Vans and Tom, you guys both have had a gander at this already. So walk us through, those of us who, you know, don't have Cerebro just to stick on our heads and to go through these VODs. Tell us a little bit about what went down. I mean, Tom Biz fits the part perfectly. We got regular fucking Charles Xavier over here. So
I'm always
talk us
thinking
through
about
this.
Valorant though. It doesn't work
yeah.
quite as well.
Exactly. I still find that this has been a really good tournament overall. I think the competition within Japan has increased ever since Zeta Division had a deep run in Masters 1. When you're thinking about the Crazy Raccoon, that's supposed to be like the close number 2. I even think that Northeption, even if they made it to the Grand Finals and even winning the Grand Finals in this regional event, it wasn't the same roster as before too, right? They've gone through some roster changes. They kind of blew it up into like 100 Thieves style, and then just looks pretty good, and they were able to win this whole series. So it came down to me being like, okay, well, I have to watch this series just to see if Zeta Division made it to like what, top 4? Was that it? I can't remember. Top 4, and then Northeption beats Zeta Division.
They finished
Therefore,
third, didn't they?
I'm sorry.
They lost to Loud.
That's it. So then I went into like the if and then I said, can Northeption be like the one that's gonna have a deep run during Masters 2 coming up in a couple of weeks. So overall, if I have to
I asked you already
quick,
about this, right? I
Yeah.
wanted to pick him as like a dark horse, but you poo-pooed it. So I'm curious to know why.
Well, that's it. Because at first, I actually even DM'd Ian about it. I was like, yo, I think Northeption's going to be the one because they beat Zeta Division, but I still have to watch the game. And I started watching the game like at 1 a.m. We finished like at 4 a.m. yesterday on stream, and I was like, I wasn't as convinced. So I don't know if you were seeing the same thing here, Tom, as to Northeption. Are they actually going to be a surprise and everybody's sleeping on Zeta like they did on Zeta Division, and Northeption is going to be like a top 4 finish as well in Copenhagen?
I think they're one of those teams that have potential for upsets because I think they've got some decent individuals. They've also got a few people who are like maniacs. Like if you've ever watched Meteor play before, or if you never have going into the event, it's going to be a lot of fun because the man will run through smokes to try and kill someone on chamber and then just not even have a TP, just try and run back into the smoke again. You're kind of like, you're mad, but this is quite fun.
Yeah.
The problem I have though is I think a lot of teams that do very well, especially at big events, are ones that are able to adapt on the fly, have really strong mid-round callings, and then just have that sort of firepower. Now, I think they've got the firepower, but a lot of their strats were very sort of direct. Like it was, we are going A this round, like to the point where if you looked at where they placed their chamber traps, it would be something along the lines of like, we have now pushed all the way up B on Breeze. I will now put it behind me, and they'll have no trap anywhere else on the map. And it's like, I don't like that as a plan because there are going to be teams that try and disrupt you a lot more than I think Zeta did.
Yeah, I mean, Daniel, let's get into my feed right away then, because I think what Tom just talked about here is like a great example as to 1, Meteor running it down, 2, trying to work together as a team for Northeption, and then 3, it's just a sight hit and then work together. There's no splits, there's no call rotation, it's just run it down. So here's an example right here. We're just looking at the pistol round, starting the best of 5. What do you have starting things off is the Owl Drone actually clearing out the site and a KO knife on top of that. What's good about this KO knife is that it doesn't allow this fade on to depth to get anything done to try to retaliate with a C's. You can't have a TP going out here from Laz, so they're going to get overrun. So let's just run that real quick. And not only that, after this Owl Drone, we just have Meteor going into the site, breaking everything that he can. We'll start dashing in as well, right out into the open and try to clear some space. And what I also like about this too is that usually when you have a composition of a Viper and a Sova on a map like Icebox, and you're able to get such early map control from your duelist that doesn't need any help, you usually plant and then have those players play further back so they can play the pulse plants. But look at everywhere Northeption is currently placed. Everybody's playing to be pushed up towards this wall, fight around this area until the toxic screen goes down, then you fall back and play your numbers after until your fuel comes back up, and then potentially play the pulse plant after. So I thought that was kind of cool. They did that quite often against Zeta Division. And Tom, you mentioned as well that, they're a type of team that it comes down to in the mid-round call or understanding how the meta should be played or how the rounds are going to be played and learning against your opponent. I actually think that this is something that Zeta Division did quite well on this first map because this is actually it was basically 3-1 for Northeption at this point. Zeta Division calls a timeout. And then XQQ/egg is calling out for the team. They're getting run down every single time. Every round that they've lost was a 5-site player hit into the A site. So how do you want to counter that? So Northeption going with the same thing, like the owl drones coming out towards the pipes, you're getting ready for your knife, but what they've changed, a single simple thing, is to have 10 playing towards the A site. So when this knife starts to hit, before it actually pops, well, what does 10 do? He's going to wall up onto one side of A main, as you can see right here. So despite having the Nightfall coming in here from Northeption, he's going to get pinged out of it too. He's not going to be under too much pressure from players not breaking the wall, because technically if you want to move quick, you also funnel also towards the left side, and thankfully
You have to go left.
yeah, and Depp also had his own Nightfall as well. So what this allows to do is to have 3 players now playing towards the left side, making sure that they lock down that area. And once that wall pulls up and breaks down into the generator side, which I didn't get the rest of the clip, but they swing towards that side and actually get the fights. You started seeing a lot more back and forth between these two players, these two teams, to have a really close score line moving into the second half, and then unfortunately it just slips in the end. And I think, Tom, we mentioned it and we talked about it before we actually went live, was like a lot of rounds Zeta Division kind of like just threw that away.
Yeah, they lost I like 2, 3, maybe 4 rounds even in some maps just to pistols, like B rushes, and just really basic stuff. And the thing that almost disappointed me a little bit is I do feel like the Zeta could have just beaten them, similarly to what we talk about with the likes of FPX. So I think they could have just won on a fundamental level. Like if you go and watch their Haven game, exclude it from the rest of the series and just watch how Zeta played, you would think they were the favorites by a country fucking mile. Like they brought out a fucking Neon, which was running into the site and killing everyone. The rounds were over in like 15 seconds, and you're just like, what happened? And then they go into the next map and they get absolutely boomed. And I'm just like, I feel like obviously they want to be like running and thinking about basically the future. They're a team that want to come into these big events and compete. And I think at a regional level, that actually harms them a little bit, because you have players like Laz who can just obliterate anyone in the region. I genuinely believe that. He's a fantastic player and proved it on the biggest stage. But sometimes I just think that they don't let him off the leash, or maybe he doesn't let himself off the leash when it comes to these sort of matches. And then you do have players like Meteor who just doesn't give a shit and is just going to push you, and they're going to rush you, and they're going to play it as a 5. And it's sort of what you said even in Afterplants. Like, I think a lot of the Afterplant scenarios, even if you look at maps like Ascent that were played by Northeption, I don't think they were good decisions. Like, for example, you're in a 3v3 and you jump up on the balcony and headshot someone. It's like, that's lunacy. Like, that's such a big risk for very little reward in most cases, but it worked. And I think that Zeta were just sat there like, well, no one's going to do that, and then they get fucked.
Yeah, and even looking at some mistakes and even going back to like map 1, we could see here Zeta. I think that the cause of also Zeta Vision having issues on getting good rounds on the attacker side too is because you're playing a composition of, yes, you have 2 agents, 2 initiators that can get a lot of information for you to know whether players are actually hidden around the sites, around the maps, but where you don't have anything else to really suppress your opponents. So you don't have the KO knife. You don't have any nades to push players out.
Also, no space taker either.
Exactly.
I think that's another thing. It's like they didn't just have that player who's just good. Like, again, look at Haven.
Yeah.
Depp just ran at them. That was why it worked so well. He just took the space and everyone else cleaned up the mess. It's like, sometimes I feel like they're thinking of, okay, what would we do to beat a Fnatic when you're not at that bit yet? You don't need to.
Agreed. And for comps, for example, that uses no duelist, they usually go for, like, example, a triple initiator. Such as DRX or such as even Optic and EG, because you have the extra initiator that could flash to help your team create space as a group. Blind these guys, trade it in, play the fundamentals, Counter-Strike style, and then overtake your site. But again, let's look at this example right here. It's like, okay, you'll have the Owl Drone, you have Prowlers to find some information right now for your team, but as you actually move on to this site, you're so tunnel vision and focused on trying to take down Meteor inside the smoke, and nothing really in terms of any other utility into the A site. Right? Yeah, exactly. He's hidden here and he stays alive the whole time. But look at where the controller's set up. Like, Sugar Zero actually has the screen on this side, and then he has a poison orb on mid. But they have nothing else to like try to block vision into the square box sandbox of A site, and no flashes to actually create that space. So then, if you're actually missing this kill against Meteor and he's just dancing around 2 cloudbursts, these guys just gave up. So when they gave up on fighting Meteor, they're pushing towards screen to fight towards screen, and then they lose fights on screen. Meteor's still fucking alive here. So now you're as Zeta Division, you're so focused on like, well, Meteor's gonna have to swing at some point. Swings right there, gets the kill to Sugar Zero. But now as you try to focus onto Meteor, you're also getting pushed in by screens. So there was a lot of convolution happening into
He gives me Padapan vibes. Like proper Padapan vibes. It's like, I don't know if he's on... obviously, it's hard to tell until he plays against the opposition at the event, because I think we had that with Padapan, where it's like, oh, he's just doing that in Southeast Asia. He's just doing that in Japan. And then he came in and did it against everyone else too, and it worked. So I don't know if it will work as well versus like top teams, but I also think that that's the power of like regions like Japan, is like, are you going to be ready for Sugar Zero hiding up in tower with a shorty every round? No, of course you're fucking not. It's not the smartest thing to do, but it really worked well. Or are you going to be ready for Laz playing hyper aggressive and taking those fights? No, people weren't ready for that. And so I that's the one thing that really gives me a little bit of hope for Northeption, is I think that they play very direct. I think sometimes I actually think that if you looked into the stats of quickest to plant on like maps that they won, they would be in like the top 1% of all teams, because they're so quick into the sites. Rounds can be over in 20 seconds. So I think that a lot of teams, if they haven't done their research properly, are really going to struggle with that, because most teams are playing slow, default E, wait till 40 seconds at least. They're already in the site by that point, by a country mile. Round's over by that point.
And as quick as they are to want to push into a site, they're also good at maintaining their composure to retake sites too. And I think this is how they win round number 24 here on Icebox, is I'll give the example, because if you're looking at the minimap to start, I'll actually wait until we get the screen and I zoom in right here. Oh, look, technology. We actually see that this post plant setup, Zeta Division is in a great spot, backs against the wall on a 4 versus 3 to win this round, because they got a late Viper's Pit into sight and they go for a plant. What they do with this right now, though, is that if you look at utility, they still have a snake bite, they still have a shock dart, and they also potentially will have a haunt up anytime soon, just to make sure that you can prevent as much as you can on a retake opportunity. What questions me right now is that after the plant, Depp is actually making his way into garage to try to reflank towards mid. But my question is, why would you really want to reflank towards mid when there's a pit that's up in this area that covers your line of sight into orange? So the time that you waste trying to rotate around will also give an opportunity for these defenders to actually make it into the pit, potentially kill these guys, and even if they're going to go for a stick plant, if they stick it on this side and somebody's pushing on yellow after, if you actually won this fight and rotated across, you can't do anything at this point. So even under the pressure, unfortunately, for Zeta Division into this map, doesn't give you an opportunity to really try to win this into an overtime. So let's look at the retake. So Depp goes back to go for that flank. He loses that fight against Black Wiz. This makes it so difficult now, because Pro has now focused on, exactly, to get boxed in. Pro has to focus on flank. Fuck it. We're all going to hide inside the pit. So if you all hide inside the pit, the 0 point spots you. They fucking recon dart into the pit, and then they take down 10. And now you're closing in. You're closing in. There's nothing you could do. They still have a flash. You have to now fight and get a convoluted fight, inside the pit right after to try to go for a pulse plant. And it doesn't
Wasn't this
work
like
out.
final kills straight bullshit as well? Like,
Yeah.
killed the person behind the person he was shooting
Yeah.
at. It was one of the
That happens
jammiest
too.
things I've ever seen. Like,
that happens too. That happens too as well. So again, there was definitely a lot of miscoms and misplays, at least from Zeta Division side, which is again why I don't want to discredit Zeta Division. I just found that maybe they didn't have the best series going into this game versus Northeption, as they already had, I think, a rematch against Northeption already in past in the upper finals. So there was also no opportunity that Northeption learned from their mistakes and then came back from their revenge too, right? But yeah, that's pretty much a summary of map 1 out of 4.
Okay.
Crow's pissed there that he or was it Sugars, whoever it was, just standing behind his teammate gets just friendly fired basically just by standing in the wrong place.
Yeah.
My goodness.
So we could actually get into like even the Haven, as you were talking about here, Tom Biz. I feel that even Haven itself, between Northeption and Zeta Division, I feel that, I don't know if they scrim against each other or something like that, but it seems that they were trying to anti-strat themselves or each other a lot during this game. I don't have the clip of like pistol rounds, but the pistol round and the second round, you actually have Northeption starting off on defense, and they go for a four-player stack in C site while having the Astra being Black Wiz playing solo on C. Probably expecting that Zeta Division was going to do a run it down towards the C site in the beginning. So, towards the A site in the beginning. So they do it for the first 2 rounds. It doesn't really work out because Zeta Division actually worked on an opposite site. And then even, for example, into round number 3 for Zeta Division on the attack, they actually were able to creep out towards the ledge into the A connector to double wall spam into sewers, close corner, because they expected a flash peek from Zenfu and from Meteor at long A. So there was a lot of this chess match between these two teams, but it still seemed that Zeta Division didn't have a real, Northeption didn't have a really good grasp of this match against Zeta, especially on the defender side, when they pretty much use the same default for like 10 rounds out of 12.
But Fracture plays out similarly, just the other way, right? Again, like it's literally almost a mirror, because Northeption won the first 2 rounds and they get blown out. This time, Zeta win the pistol on defense. They're able to put 2 rounds together, and they get absolutely fucking rolled on defense.
The funny thing about me with, or the way that I see it is, we could actually even look at the pistol round to start things off on Fracture, is that Zeta Division are almost even playing the original Fnatic lineup that they had towards Champions, right? So you see Sugar Zero on an Astra, you see 10 with Raze, and then you see this Breach coming out, and then you think about, okay, cool, potential trap plays and stuff like that. I just realized that after I did the zoom in, I never got back into the fucking regular desktop screen. So guys, I'm still learning. That said, we're learning right now. We're still going. So you're thinking about trap plays and stuff like that as well that could potentially work here for Zeta Division on defense. But look at how they set up their defense on pistol round. They still won this no matter what, but it's a breach fault line into tree, and then there's no stars at the bottom. These guys are just running down. There's no satchel chargers. There's no paint shells.
They're so sure.
Yeah, if you're looking at this, there's 0 utility being used by Sugar Zero, by Dep, by 10, getting down towards tree. So then, thankfully, they go for a crunch into this side, and then realize that there's no hit here, and they go back into the B side and then win it. But that, again, is being very lucky that you're not playing against Northeption working on tree at the beginning of the round. Because if you're trying to go for like the flash, if you have a neon on the timing, then you're already sliding in for kills, you're already going for a stun at the staircase, but they have nothing to retaliate with. I think they wanted to be more reactive with Crow's utility, but you already have players already in tree that might flash your teammates.
I really want to see how Northeption would have played on the defense of this, because that's the thing I kind of worry about, is that their attack was like, I don't think I've ever seen more use from a Brimstim before, because it would just be the whole team basically just running straight into one side of the map, and a lot of the time they got it absolutely spot on. I do think that Dariali, like his neon was fantastic just because of the amount of space he was able to take. He did his role to perfection, but it was just the amount of rounds where you watch Zeta almost just having to retake from positions where they've already lost the whole site, because they go, okay, well, they've just done this, so now we're going to stack up this side.
Yeah.
It just made it really, really difficult to play against. And that's the thing. It's like on defense, you're now on that side where you're gambling. It's impossible to cover every single part of Fracture. It's not how the map works. So will they be as effective? That's my issue, because if you're running into the empty site every time, probably going to win. I don't know if that would have happened every time they play.
Yeah, and Northeption really pretty much had the grasp of the attacker side too, and even on defense. I'm just going to show the pistol round, a nice little clutch at least
love
from
your pistols.
I mean, you kind of have to show pistol rounds, especially on like a 10-2 or when the game has so many short rounds in a half. It's 12 rounds per half, first to 13. Winning pistol could potentially get you 4. It's so important to try to win pistol rounds. So for Northeption, this is a great opportunity to already get a 12-2 lead if they could. And what they do at the beginning of this round is actually go for a bridge crunch, just like Zeta Division tried to do towards the bottom. But the nice little adjustment about it too is that once they realize that there's nobody on top, like they jiggle this, they wait around the corner of arcade, nobody's peeking out. They say, fuck it, let's just go at the underpass because our 2 other players have already pushed out towards dish. So they get under the underpass, and because you have the beauty of getting the Viper Wall up here on the attack, they have an inclination that Zeta Division will be hitting towards this B site. So they run under the underpass, These guys are still setting up for Zeta Division, and then they run into a trap. Laz is pushing forward without setting up his traps. You probably recalled him at this point, and unfortunately, probably didn't expect 2 players, make that now even 3 players to get into sight. And this is all about micro after, right? How do you react on the information after? You see the fault lines coming out too, frenzies, last line of defense, and then Sugar Zero's on his own on a 3 versus 1, but the spike's already down towards sewers. So this is just a nice little thing that Northeption is able to, I mean, that also is fucking ridiculous. He just does a drive-by Ferrari peek and just shoots and lands the headshot, but thankfully Meteor kills him because Sugar Zero goes into astral form. So unfortunately, it doesn't pay off in the end on the clutch for Sugar Zero, but I just like the fact that you're able to break these timings for Northeption, understanding how your opponents are playing, and again, having these rematches on these maps again, and being like, okay, well, they did this last time, let's try to anti-strat it this time too, and it worked perfectly. And the only moment where you maybe had some faith into Zeta Division having some sort of a comeback is this game right here, or this run right here on a pulse plant. There's just a lot of action happening into map point here for Northeption at 12-3, because again, we talked about the pistol that they won. So
hey, they're on the same side. That's great.
They're on the same site, so they have a perfect stack, right? It's such a low buy for Northeption, so they gamble for this. And they actually gamble perfectly, because look at the amount of kills that they're getting right now for Northeption. It comes down to, I think, even like a 1 versus 1, just because of timing off this one too. So Black Wiz comes out, and then these guys are just kind of like trying to peek 1 versus 1. You have the aftershock that comes out, but the timing is that everybody's so focused on Black Wiz at this part here that they didn't expect Zenfu to come out of A holes when the smoke dissipates. So Zeta Division didn't understand their own timing of their own smoke when they were playing, or the attacker smoke, when it actually came down on the pulse plant. So that said, Depp comes into a 1 versus 1 against Zenfu. He's got 5 HP the whole time. He picks up Spike, goes for a plant, but he actually gets off the plant because he hears the paint shells. Lands his headshot and dies right after. So he's able to stay alive to make it 4-12 just because of that. But then, of course, Northeption just ends up winning the round after because they have the money to work with, and then it's a 13-4 on the scoreboard.
Damn. All right, let's move on and talk about this Ascent map then. A little bit closer than the 2 prior. Feels like we had a real contest on Icebox, and then it got a little bit swingy after that. So, what do you got for us here on the last map here? Obviously, it's 2-1 favoring Northeption going into it.
Yeah, I think Northeption continuing what we were talking about before of being very fast paced, and again, Tom, you know how I love my pistol rounds, so we're gonna have to show the pistol here too. It was just nice how they fucking did this.
Did you actually watch any of the buy rounds? Or did you just watch the pistol rounds and then?
And pistol rounds, the only thing that's important was it's fucking 13 4s and 13 3s.
12, baby.
Tom. Exactly. So, this pistol run right over here, you have Northeption on the attack, and I like the fact that they have this KO and Fade. There's no Sova, but I still find that the Fade is still very useful and could still do her job to try to take mid control over here. So what they do is they have Black Wiz playing on the back of top mid so that he can run his stars whenever he wants. He has 3 stars to work with, and then he's going to help towards this mid take. So they have the Prowler to work towards mid. That's going to initiate also a smoke towards that back to maybe make their opponents think that they're going to hit towards this B site, especially when you already have Zenfu, setting up a KO knife from spawn to land right into market. So a smoke that comes up here, a star that comes towards spawn, a 0 point that comes into the market, and then a Prowler on mid. When they also have front B control for the defense, they probably still think that they have a great timing and a great read that a hit is coming towards the B site. This is why you also see Depp rotating outside from the garden. And also, as this trademark gets broken and there's a smoke up, you can't really find any information right now. The only first point of contact that you have is going to have to be 10, playing from the staircase, looking into the market. So the line of sight, even looking into Pizza, is not that well perceived by Zeta. Yeah. Exactly. So there's still a lot of map control that could still be taken taken opportunity of from Northeption. So they actually decide to 4-man play towards Catwalk, where the Astra goes with him. The second Prowler pulls Depp back, But this comes into a perfect break to allow the lurk here from the chamber of Meteor to get inside spawn. Now you just have simultaneous kills all across the place from heaven. They're trying to rotate back and forth. An underhand flash. Now you're fighting towards mid side. Now you have crossfire setups and trades opportunities for Northeption for the attack.
He did this all through the map.
Exactly.
Like, he was an like that was the one thing I remember writing in my notepad. I was like, this may look like it's a no duelist composition, but it's actually a double duelist composition. One of them being the KO and the other one being the chamber, because they did not play these. Well, obviously chamber, but I mean, he did not play this KO as a support at all. It was just mega aggressive, like old school CS pop, flash yourself in and try and headshot everyone that's in front of you.
What's the normal protocol around a deep Astra smoke as defenders? Can you actually have someone in market? Or do you have to just give it up and hope that you can hold from that B side?
Yeah, I think at this point when you have on the defense Zeta Division, you have like the Prowler, you have a KO with you that could maybe help a little bit more in terms of trying to find information right after, right? So if you've lost mid control, but you still have utility off a Haunt and a Prowler, you could, or Prowler, sorry, you could actually throw that to get information instead of throwing your bodies to try to peek into that. So there's still a protocol that you could have to readjust and give middle to your opponents, but you still need good protocols to figure out how you want to re-clear the areas that you actually want to retake. So to find out if there actually is mid pressure, go for that knife on mid, go for the Haunt on mid. If there's nobody there and you hear the footsteps toward Cat, you can't really run back if you already lost that position from depth. You probably have to play further back, making sure that you're cutting those rotations out, and you're playing into hidden spots into hell or something like that too. Just the readjustment from Zeta Division on that pistol was trying to run it down and fight back individually instead of trying to take back as a team. And which is why I think later on when you get into the last rounds of the half, I'm going to show one right over here actually. I think this came after a timeout. So even if you saw a lot of pressure coming in from Northeption, it's already 7-3 onto the half. A timeout was called here from Egg again, XQQ. And what he said was like, look, these guys are actually working along the extremities a lot too, because they have this this fade and this KO in the rotation. They're doing a little bit of mid pressure, but they're not actually overexerting it because they give it up and then they work on the extremities after. So he probably says, let's just start working towards mid. So for 3 rounds in a row, these guys just fucking started pushing mid and taking control of mid every time, and they didn't care to play the retake after. So this resulted into allowing Zeta Division to actually get all of this the next 3 rounds to make it 7-5 later on in the half. And that's awesome crazy shit right now, from 10 going with satchel charges to break crosshair placement while these guys are already pushing and rotating for trades. And as these guys already take control of B main, there's not too much left for Northeption to try to fight into regaining that control, because you already committed to try to take into the B site. So try to take down Crow. Crow did an excellent job to actually survive. Like look at his POV right now here too. So he sets his C's on the ground, but at the same time, it's not only on his utility, it's from across the map. Sugar Zero throws a smoke so that he can play around that just in case there's going to be KO flashes, there's going to be anything else coming out from the utility from the attackers, that you can play around the smoke to try to survive for as long as you can to give a chance for your teammates to rotate over. And I think this is also something that Black Wiz did very well too on this very map. When his teammates were getting pressure towards B, he actually smoked towards the back to make sure you could dance around that as well. So
see, my takeaway from these rounds though was just slightly different, because I feel like this is the classic Vansilli selling the positive, whereas my look at this was much more negative. The fact that the rounds that were actually coming through for Zeta were them like mega fucking pushing mid and blast packing over the top of players, and it was like they just didn't have a sight hold. Like this was the time, and even here, even with this like mega flank, you needed Crow to get a multi frag on the site while playing Fade, because they didn't delay them at all. Like they had a perfect flank and 3 players still pushed him with no support. Like that's a bad hold. That's a bad hold that he succeeded in. It's not a good hold at all.
The good news is that, of course, from luck and timing too, from that kill from Zeta Division, the first kill that he got was actually the spike carrier inside B. And as he stays alive, I mean, look at that. He used that smoke from the Astra to actually play behind the smoke, let their opponents drop down the smoke to clear towards the back site, and he's playing in the front just by where that spammable wall is, and he's just fragging everybody. So I actually, on the other end, I actually think that they sold this perfectly, more than me trying to be the nice guy silly.
He still needed a triple kill for them to not get the flag.
But it made it work for a bit. But I think things just started to deteriorate a little bit more once Zeta Division got the attack. And I think in the end, I don't know if it's because of the pressure of playing in front of like 14,000 people that got to them or whatnot. But it definitely showed that Northeption was the better team. Didn't falter under the pressure of 14,000 viewers watching them live and like hundreds of thousands online.
They thrived.
Yeah, they definitely thrived on all of that because you could see through the player cams and reactions that they're just very, very happy when they're they're calm, they're cool, they're collected, and then Zeta Division just couldn't pull through. So we'll have to see what happens. And my doorbell rings. I'll be right back.
All right, yeah, look, I think, a big part of this discussion was, we wanted to talk about Northeption as a potential dark horse, and, both of you guys were pretty convinced that, it was still going to be a huge leap for them to make that sort of deep run, which is not, which is not hating on this team, of course. It's just like there are a couple of things we noticed that are a little dubious, whether it's from Northeption or some of their opponents, right? Things that, they maybe sort of want to clean up a little bit.
Well, the thing is, like, look at Crazy Recruit completely flunked every time they went to an event. Zeta the first time completely flunked, and then they started off really bad and then managed to build into the tournament and sort of, I feel like they got better as they went along. So for Northeption to come in and be good straight away at what I would call a more stacked event, because EMEA actually has some teams this time that isn't just G2. I feel like it's going to be, I think it's more difficult an event. You're going to have teams like, for example, Loud wasn't tried and tested before. Now they are. They're going to be better. Optic have won an event. I feel like that's weight off their shoulders. They're probably going to be better. You got Fnatic with their actual team. You've got FPX hopefully with actually there and with more of their team. Like, I think they're coming into a tougher event with less experience than Zeta had. So for them to do as well, I think is an unfair expectation. But I do think they can upset a team or two. I hope they won't just get blown out.
Yeah. I think, important to point out that, like, the viewership for this event was insane, right? Even for online viewers, like a LAN event always adds that little bit of extra, bit of special. Plus a region that is like maybe a little under televised for Western viewers. So, and crucially, seeing that there's like huge local buy-in, like from fans domestically, which is like for a PC FPS, it's unheard of in Japan. Completely fucking unheard of. So I mean, I would have to say so. Obviously, like, they have turnout for League of Legends, and there was definitely a little bit bubbling there in that scene. But this is really groundbreaking for. I mean, this viewership is insane, right? 291,000. Average is 112. Think of all the Western viewers that are also getting involved in this. It's a really big deal.
I'm pretty sure it shits on like all the other viewership standards by quite a margin. Like, I don't think the peak of EMEA or NA was even close to that number.
Yeah, I mean, how did you guys get up to like maybe 90? Like, do you guys have a feel for what the EMEA NA finals look like?
I don't know off the top of my head.
Yeah, no, probably. But
I know that the average was probably like 45, 50. If I was going to say average viewers, but I don't know about.
I mean, it's regional. I would suggest though that, like, it being a LAN always, gives it a bit of a buff. Okay, so here's the EMEA. 100, 160. It's pretty good. Yeah, average, obviously, 70.
But also, that's Liquid BBL, which was in week 2.
I got you.
That's not
the
playoffs.
entirety of challenges, yeah.
So 135 is the actual. Like, obviously, BBL and Liquid have insane fan bases. So
that's
like,
it.
I feel like, but that's the grand final. The grand final peaked 135.
And that's what I was gonna say. Like, when you're actually looking at the fan base of who we're gonna get in at Masters, I mean, think about the Loud fans, Goals that's gonna be co-streaming, and then everybody else that's gonna be streaming for that. If Crew's gonna make it over again, the Croupium crew. That's going to be pulling out of that to support that region. And just Japan in itself can not only cheer for Northeption, but a lot of them will also cheer for Fnatic, just because Fnatic has that another headquarters in Japan, or at least like a good presence out there too. Where I even saw like tweets coming out from Durka being like, "Yo, it's my face in the crowd in
so
Japan,
it's holding up his face."
Exactly. So I think there's gonna be a great viewership worldwide for the teams like Loud, teams like Fnatic. So I'm actually really looking forward to the experience.
Yeah, that's going to be insane. We're going to have to wait a little bit, obviously, for Copenhagen. It starts on the 10th of July. In the meantime, we'll be continuing to sort of track many of our teams' run-ups into the event and try and bring you the latest breaking news, of course, in the Valorant scene. Until then, though, give yourselves a break. And remember, just because we think a team's not going to win Masters doesn't mean we think they're dog shit. We've got to be honest here.
Yes.
We've got to make some judgment calls eventually. Plenty of dark horses, which is exciting. We're going to keep profiling these regions as we go in. So stick around for that one next week, Tuesday, 11 a.m. PT for more Valoranting. For now, enjoy your week. Excuse me, your Greek as well, if you know.
Greek
have those
yogurt. I love
affiliations.
Greek yogurt.
Yeah, I'm a big
Yeah.
yogurt fan. I'm gonna go sleep. See you guys later.